Hello? Thank you. I would like to call to order January 24th PZBA meeting at 7:03. General, please.
Chairman Kempa.
Here.
Commissioner DeGraff.
Here.
Commissioner Saywert.
Here.
Commissioner Simmons.
Here.
Commissioner Mashevsky.
Here.
Commissioner Weigel. And Commissioner Patel has notified us he will be late, but he is planning to be in attendance. A quorum is present.
Thank you. First item of business is to approve the minutes from our December 13th special meeting. Are there any corrections to the minutes as presented? If there are none, then I'd like a motion to approve the December 13th special meeting minutes.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, the first order of business tonight is a public meeting. Thank you, everybody, for attending. It's a PZBA case number 24-01 PC. A description of the meeting is a staff report and public comments regarding keeping of chickens in the R1 single-family district. Can I please have a motion to open the public meeting at 7:04?
I'll make the motion.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Actually, we need a roll call.
Okay, roll, please.
Commissioner Mashevsky.
Here.
Commissioner
Aye.
Simmons.
Aye.
Commissioner DeGraff.
Aye.
Commissioner Saywert.
Aye.
Chairman Kempa.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. I'll give a brief description of why we have this case here today, and then I'll ask Director Peterson to give a more detailed description of what the current situation is and what we are hoping to accomplish here today. So the City Council has asked us to basically invite the public to speak on the matter of keeping chickens in Prospect Heights. Many of you know that chickens have been allowed here for many years since
Before the city was a city.
Right. So the city has received some complaints regarding chickens, and so the object of this meeting is to hear everyone's opinions and basically collect those opinions. As you know, this meeting is being recorded. So we'll collect those opinions and we'll try to come up with a solution that's favorable to everyone. From a housekeeping item here, we will let everybody speak, but we respectfully ask that you keep your speech to 5 minutes, and we'll have a timer and we'll time everybody's speech. We also ask that you come up to the podium and that you speak to the board, because that's what's being recorded, not to the audience. And we ask for a name and the address of a speaker. Like I said, everything will be recorded and all the comments will be taken into consideration.
Also in an effort to save time, because seeing some of the email comments that we have received, if you are in agreement with others, we don't need to hear the same comments 22, 23, 24 times. So we do want to know who does have an opinion. So if you want to come up, give your name, address, and just say, I concur with those in favor of or against whatever position, or a brief why. If everyone speaks, we could be here until midnight, 1 a.m.
But if we need to, we will, even till tomorrow morning, so.
Okay, so.
We have eggs for breakfast.
All right, Director Peterson, if you could could give a summary of what the current situation is and what we are here to try to accomplish, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman Kempa. As everyone knows, chickens have been allowed here in Prospect Heights, and before Prospect Heights was a city. It was a rural suburban area that has maintained its character, and as such, our ordinances on the books are dated, 1977 to be exact, which was when the first set of ordinances were adopted by the city. They have not changed since that point in time. So, that being said, some conditions have changed. Over the last 10 years, especially during the COVID era, we've seen an increase in urban agriculture. Okay, it's there. People have done so, and it's not a bad thing. However, our ordinances do not restrict the number of chickens. They do not restrict roosters. They do not restrict other things. They don't even state you have to have a coop. All it says is you have to have a pen or a structure to provide safety for them. However, we do have zoning ordinances that have been on the books just as long. And without knowing who has chickens or who's building these structures, we've had a lot, not a lot, but a number of cases over the years where coops and runs are put in required side yards to next to lot lines. We've had, and coops and runs are considered accessory structures, and we've always permitted accessory structures, detached garage, sheds, barns, other structures, gazebos, and chicken coops are similar to that. Without knowing who's doing that, who has chickens, we're not making sure that those folks are putting those structures in the appropriate places, which has been a number of complaints. The biggest complaint that we've received over the years, and I've been here 9 years now, is roosters. Okay, that is the number one complaint. It's covered under the police ordinance, animal control, as you know, not supposed to have, and in chapter 3, which is our noise control ordinance, is no animal or nothing that will be obnoxious or loud or intrusive. The problem with enforcement is that we have to witness it to write a citation. Neighbors are reluctant to sign complaints about their others, about the neighbors and about the issue. Sergeant Smith could attest to how many years of getting those noise complaints. We get them every year, but the majority of the people don't follow through, so we can't do an enforcement. Because if we write a ticket, we have to observe it and determine it's at 10 o'clock at night or before 7 a.m., and that's very difficult to enforce. So we have that's an enforcement issue. We've also seen a significant increase in the number of birds being kept on properties. We've had cases in excess of 20 chickens on a lot, and our ordinance does not allow business use with the keeping of chickens. This is also for personal consumption. So how can a family of 4 go through 20 plus eggs a day? But I'm not, okay, but the average person, the average family is not going through that volume. So then the question is why, what, is it necessary? Okay, and those are all questions we don't have the answers to today, okay? But we do not allow eggs to be sold out of homes. It's not an approved home occupation. We do not allow the sale, or the state does not allow the sale of livestock out of your house without being a licensed livestock producer and salesperson. Also, too, there's been an increase in awareness of avian influenza flu. The virulent Newcastle flu, there's different diseases out there that have been brought to city's attentions. Our job within the city is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of all the citizens, whether they have chickens, whether they not, and to preserve the quality of life within the city. So, and the state also charges us with establishing reasonable rules to that end. Okay. Patrick, can you please put up the PowerPoint for me, please? Or John? start PowerPoint? Okay, just go ahead and hit the first slide. So this is a very big topic. We're going to have to address multiple code sections within the city ordinance to address chickens. Number one, it's a health and sanitation issue under noise standards and prohibited uses. So that's in the general title. So that does not need a zoning hearing because it's not a zoning issue. But we will make recommendations about noise standards. And one of the sections is animals and birds. You can't have frequent, long, or continued noise that shall disturb others. Well, in my 9 years here, the number one complaint is roosters crowing causing a disturbance for neighbors. Okay? And we'll get to that in a little bit. Again, we have to go into a situation too of prohibited conditions. Nobody can be allowed to create a situation or hazardous for its neighbors, whether it's property maintenance codes, whether it's conditions of houses, whether it's how you keep your chickens. And as much as everyone here tries their best, not all chicken owners are good managers of their flocks. It's the truth. We've had fairly good success when we've had one-on-one conversations, but it has increased over the last few years, and that's mainly because of the sheer numbers of birds that people have had in their properties. It's a zoning issue. We have lot coverage rules. Accessory buildings and chicken coops, barns, and similar structures have always required permission and have had limitations on size. Okay? And we're very generous in our town because of the fact we have half-acre lots. This is the only municipality that I've ever worked for that had more than 120 square feet for an accessory structure. We allow 720 square foot garages, 200 square foot sheds or other structures, and an 80-foot garden shed. So you could, on a 20,000 square foot lot, have 1,000 square feet of accessory structures. Now add chicken coop, chicken run, now you have more buildings than are allowed over the square footage. Coops are defined as an accessory structure. If people aren't getting permits, other questions are where they're putting them. We don't allow coops next to property lines. All accessory structures must be 5 feet off of the property line or the rear property line, not on corner lots and out of the dedicated easements, okay? We've had a number of those. Once people build the coops, it's very difficult for people to move them, okay? Again, we're not saying no, we're just saying we need to have a structure in which to make sure that when people do that, they can be compliant and not be disruptive to the neighbors and community. It is also an issue when we come down to the police issue, because this is an animal control ordinance. This is where the numbers have come in. In the police deal, it lists the prohibited animals. Doesn't say anything about what's allowed. So that means chickens are allowed. There's no restriction on numbers. However, that's also another increase in complaints we've had in the last couple of years is the numbers, and we've also had people that have allowed free-ranging, free-roaming chickens that go onto their neighbor properties out into the right-of-way, and that is a safety hazard, okay? And it's a nuisance to the neighbors. So, again, management practices, okay? We prohibit cockfighting, we prohibit a number of other things, and it also addresses obnoxious odors, unkept feed bins, other things that could attract other pests, environment, and vermin, okay? Yes, we have coyotes. We've always had coyotes. Chickens aren't the cause of coyotes. They're not the reason we have coyotes. But if you're not managing your flock, that's an unexpected detriment or consequence of having them, is because they're looking for a food source. Raccoons, weasels, and other prey animals do come in. Cats, are big killers of birds, okay? So we are here tonight not to outlaw that, but to look at the zone, the city code and see if we can come to reasonable standards that everybody can live with. Okay, even the folks that have written emails that are against, and all this will be part of the minutes of the meeting coming up. We're not gonna read all the names, but they will be provided, that are against it, aren't against chickens per se. They just wanna have some reasonable controls and rules so everybody can live comfortably together. So that's the goal tonight. I want everybody well aware of that. This isn't here to outlaw or ban, but to come to some reasonable solutions of what this will look like. As part of this, our top five enforcement complaints are noise, number of chickens, location of coops and runs that are not constructed with quality materials. Had one 2 years ago that was recycled pallets. Who wants to look at recycled pallets in your neighbor's yard? Okay, again, some people got into it, not ready to, and that becomes an issue to the community. So we have to have some standards. Also, too, there are some guidelines and recommendations by the Illinois Department of Agriculture in the size of the coops, how much square feet per hen, how much run area. And I think we have more than enough property on our lots to solve that problem. Okay, it's just what is that amount? And then recently is the free roaming chickens, uncontrolled. And so that's where our top five enforcement calls come from regarding chickens. Enforcement challenges, as I explained earlier, it's almost impossible to enforce the noise violation unless we hear it. And unless a neighbor files a written affidavit and complaint asking us to pursue a enforcement action. So then people live with the annoyance, and it's a silent, one of those silent things that keep building and building in people that then they get upset. And I've got an email from a person who's ready to move because of the noise created, not only by chickens, but other animals kept at the property. So that's not a good thing to read from a staff perspective, that we could possibly lose a resident based on the behavior of their neighbor. Failure to obtain the required approvals is a challenge. If people aren't coming in to register that, we have no clue unless we discover it or find a complaint. And usually at that point in time, some people who are good intentioned, they don't want to be violators, inadvertently violate because they don't know the rules and didn't get approvals. Okay? So it's not that we want to be intrusive, but we have a set of zoning standards that have been around as long as the chicken ordinances, animal control ordinance has been around. So it's a matter of making sure we're enforcing those consistently. Other challenges are we don't have a good count. And the state of Illinois, Illinois Department of Agriculture has a free registration tool for folks that want to register their properties as livestock premises. And by the way, folks, chickens are not pets. Chickens are not that. They are livestock. They are considered livestock by definition. So therefore, the Illinois Department of Regulation does want to have that. I've been asked a number of times, do you have any health-related issues related to chickens? I don't know. I don't even know how many properties have chickens on them. I estimate somewhere around 50. I may be high, I may be low, but the issue is if there's a health outbreak, there's no way of tracking it or traceability of it. So that's a responsibility of the city to make sure that we have programs in place to monitor the health and safety of not only the residents, but the animals in which are kept. And so those are the challenges we have. And can you go to the next one? In preparation for tonight, just to have an idea, this will be on the city's website, but basically, this is not inclusive by any means. This was an hour sitting at the computer looking up what local municipalities allow chickens, okay? These were very easy. Wheeling, yes. Do they have to register with the state? Yes. Do they have to, are they required to get a license from the municipality? Yes. Just a simple registration application form, prove they've registered with the state, make sure they're inspected for a small fee, and make sure they're compliant with all the zoning codes. Okay? Are roosters prohibited? Yes, because again, they experience the same thing. And I talked to the Director of Community Development over there, and that's the main complaint they got as well. They list the maximum number of hens allowed, 6, which if you go through this list, that's pretty much the maximum of any town. I'm not saying 6 is the right number for us because most of those municipalities have smaller lots. But is 20, I think in my opinion, and this is my opinion of doing some research and seeing others, and oh, you're talking to a kid who lives in the country, who has chickens next to him, who grew up on a dairy farm, next to a chicken farm, production farm, that had at one time 10,000. Chickens can be an annoyance. I like chickens, but 20, in my opinion, is too many. What is the happy medium, though? Okay, that's what we're gonna have to find out.
Why is 20 too many?
Personal consumption, on a daily basis, what does an average hen lay on a day?
They don't all lay every
I understand, they don't all lay, but they're, if you get good
You
healthy.
earlier propagated a misnomer that 20 chickens lay 20 eggs a day.
No, whoa, stop.
Right.
You propagated that yourself.
If it would be helpful to
Excuse
answer
me,
your question.
excuse me, let me finish and then you'll all have your chance to speak. But we're going through what the other communities, as part of what we do is we look at what other communities.
St. Charles, they don't have that
Sir,
limit for law.
I have to ask you, sir, you will have 5 minutes to speak when the time comes. Please, let him finish. Thank you.
All right. So they look at the numbers of square feet allowed for the combination coop and run, because it is an accessory structure. And a lot of towns that did not able to get their information in here, anywhere from 3 square feet to 6 square feet per hen for a structure. And that adds adequate place for resting, safety, concern, healthy space for the chickens, okay? So our accessory structures, you could have up to 200 square feet for your pen and your run. We have to look in conjunction with your other accessory structures. Okay, those are just workable challenges. I'm not saying they're insurmountable. Okay, our permits approved, yes, at a minimum a zoning permit. And the reason being is we've always required them. People who've been doing this have not been getting permits, so by default, they're not in compliance anyway. Okay? So they look at these, an issue is too, is some towns prohibit any electrical to the coop. Some towns have had issues with electrical issues in the water tanks, especially in the cold weather, providing heat to the coops. So I'm not saying we would prohibit it, but we have to look at the safety concerns. And the only way to address those is through the issuances of permits, making sure if electrical's allowed, that it's installed properly. Okay, those are just basic safety issues that we would do for any accessory structure. So we're not asking for things above and beyond what the code already requires. It's just determining some factors in between. And even the folks that had presented emails in opposition to chickens were offered reasonable solutions that are in line with what we saw in our research from other municipalities. So, that being said, from a staff perspective, let's here. We will be working on this to come up with a reasonable solution, okay, and addressing the issues that are coming up here. And we will take all the comments tonight into account in that direction. We do believe that keeping of backyard chickens is a viable use within the city. With our lots, residential in the R1 district, averaging approximately 20,000 square feet, some a little greater, some a little less, some 3/4 acres. There's ample property for this type of use. Okay, we don't, from a staff perspective, see it not, okay? However, the keeping of chickens cannot be disruptive to the quality of life for the neighboring properties. Okay, just because a person chooses or family chooses to raise chickens doesn't mean it can intrude upon or impede upon the quality of life of the neighbors. Okay, we all have to live in this town together. We all have to live, work, raise our families, do this together, and preserve the quality of life for everybody. So that's why reasonable rules is what we're proposing. Because as it sits right now, there are no real rules or real guidelines. So with that, that's the staff position on this. So, thank you very much, Chairman.
Oh, thank you for that introduction. Well, at this time, we can take public comments. So whoever's ready, if you could come up to the podium.
I'm ready.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, can we ask
Well,
questions?
do you want to ask questions of me first or of them? Of them, yeah.
After the 5 minutes?
What's the proper?
Because if we wait till the end, it could be very late before
Right.
we ask questions. Yeah, we should, and it's up to you, the commission, if you want to allow the questioning during their 5-minute presentation or after the 5 minutes are up.
I say we do it after 5 minutes if
If
the
there's a question
speeches.
of somebody
Of
that's,
the exec, okay, so that, what we'll do is let you speak, let you
Okay.
present when you're done with, whether it's 3 minutes, whether it's 4 minutes, whether it's 5, then some questions will may be asked of the zoning board. Thank you.
Before you speak, I do need your name for the record.
Sure. Is this- My name is Genevieve Charest. I live at 5 Alton Road.
Can we, John, so can we swear everybody in at once?
No,
We
it's-
don't need to
it's-
swear.
It's an open
It's
meeting.
not, it's an
Oh,
open
they don't
meeting.
even-
And just so everybody understands the process, tonight is just a meeting to get public comment. It's not a public hearing. If there are certain amendments to the code, specifically the zoning code, those will require a public hearing under zoning law. Changes to the police, the animal nuisance control, the health code, which are not zoning, do not need to have a public hearing. They can be, take your comments and go straight forward. But if we have to do any changing to the zoning code, it will require a public hearing, which will be publicly noticed. People will be allowed to come and give testimony, again, to the proposed draft amendment. So this is just a informational, trying to gather where people's positions are on the issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello, friends, neighbors, board members. I'm Genevieve Charest, and I live in Prospect Heights with my husband Michael, my baby Alice, and our 13 hens, who we fondly call the girls, and we fondly refer to ourselves as chicken tenders. We volunteer with the Prospect Heights Natural Resources Commission and daily enjoy the beauty and diversity of plants and animals, both wild and domestic, that call our town and our yard home. When we searched for a home, we knew we wanted a different way of life, and we specifically chose Prospect Heights because of its openness to that, specifically its unrestricted chicken keeping. Prospect Heights people value their freedom and independence, and my family is no different in this regard. If that goes away, we would have to leave as well. I do believe that all of our residents deserve to be protected from any behaviors that create a serious nuisance, hazard, or abuse. And for that reason, I am glad that we already have ordinances that cover the situations you mentioned earlier, including clean and humane animal care, noxious and pervasive odors, animals running loose, etc. But to take things further than this, with a chicken ban, a rooster ban, or a limit on the number of chickens is unnecessary, wrong, arbitrary, and contrary to the spirit of Prospect Heights. It is also ineffective and will paint us as a backwards and reactionary town that plans to move in the opposite direction of cities everywhere. By and large, towns are moving toward loosening or dropping any chicken restrictions that they have historically had so that residents can produce healthy food in a humane way. I do agree with the other gentleman who spoke earlier and said that the list of restrictions in nearby towns does appear to be cherry-picked. I don't know if Chicago was on there. Chicago has no limits and allows roosters. Those of you who are unfamiliar with chickens might be surprised to learn what excellent pets, yes, I am using the word pets, and family they make. Ours play with baby Alice. They come to our back door and knock when they're bored. They beg for treats. They climb into our laps. They nested on my belly throughout my pregnancy. They nap on a picnic blanket next to my daughter. The most dangerous thing they have ever done is steal my husband's frozen yogurt. I would like to note that poultry to human disease transmission is extremely uncommon and non-existent in many areas. I share all this to convey not that we're some special woodland fantasy, although we are, but rather to say that our flock is the rule and not the exception. Ask around and I think you will find that most backyard chicken keepers have the same sort of loving and peaceful relationship with their chickens. I have become very knowledgeable about poultry medicine and animal husbandry, and I can tell you that chickens do not work the same way as cats or dogs. So I want to address a few misconceptions so we can come at this from an informed place. First, chickens are flock animals. They naturally do very well in large groups and require plenty of flock mates to feel secure, protected, and happy. They need, I'm going to use a higher number than you did, 10 square feet each to be happy, and they're naturally very tidy animals. So even if you have a larger number of chickens, you will not produce a nuisance smell when cared for properly. Our lot, in fact, is almost a full acre, 0.98. On a lot our size, it is technically possible to use rotational grazing to raise 500 hens in a sanitary free-range way. Baby Alice keeps me a little too busy for that, but it's possible. But I want to be real about this. If you're not inclined to take care of your pets, whether they're dogs, cats, chickens, or what have you, it only takes one to create a disturbance. If you're trying to feed your family, you also need to be realistic about how many you're going to need. Our neighbors have 3 boys, that's 5 people. They use a dozen eggs a day. You need about 20 birds to guarantee a dozen eggs a day. Limit us to a low and arbitrary number like 6, and you make it impossible for a flock to feed its people. Second, it takes 10 chickens to produce the same amount of droppings as just 1 dog. And chicken droppings are non-toxic and can turn into safe and valuable compost in as little as 3 to 4 weeks. I love dogs, too, but their waste is unsafe to compost and is classified as a toxic biohazard by the EPA. Third, chickens do not attract rodents. In fact, they eat mice and other rodents in addition to ticks and other disease-causing pests. If anybody would like to have fun on YouTube with that, go for it. Unsecured food, whether it be for cats, dogs, chickens, or people, is what attracts rodents, and that is a problem that is easily solved. 4, roosters perform valuable and irreplaceable services, including protecting hens, finding food for the flock, keeping them together and on the property, maintaining harmony, and fertilizing eggs so that keepers can breed and hatch their own healthy chicks. We have numerous rooster-owning neighbors, one that borders our property. It should be noted roosters do not make noise before sunrise and after sunset, and they are a pleasant and welcome addition to the neighborhood. 5, laying hens at their loudest only get up to 60 to 70 decibels, the same as normal human conversation. A rooster crow, 90 decibels, the same as a barking dog. I want to be respectful of time, so I will cut my comments there. But I do just want to thank everybody for their time here and say I don't want to push valuable members out of the community, but I also don't want to resort to stripping one another of our rights and our way of life. I think we can work out our differences without creating rules that only some feel will be only some feel will be reasonable. Thank you so much.
Very well said. You know.
Hi, my name is Michael Kormanek, and I live at 5 Alton Road with Genevieve, Alice, and our 13 girls. I want to be clear, from everything I've heard tonight and from this whole thing, this does not have anything to do with chickens. As the director kindly spent quite a bit of time, a half hour, in very detailed listing the ordinances that cover anything that chickens could cause. So if it's becoming a problem, it's not an ordinance issue, it's an enforcement issue. And if people are at the point where they're ready to move, maybe they should file a complaint and put their name where their concern is, and then they'd get some results. That's why that process is in place. That's called living in a society and compromising with everybody else in that society. Not just saying, no, 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 no. I studied at Second City, and the first thing they taught us when we got there is, this is a community that's gonna try to make people happy and laugh. The first thing you need to say is yes and. If you say no, it shuts everything down, and no one laughs, and no one has any fun. And I would say if the ordinances are not there for chickens, then what next? An ordinance for quail? An ordinance for bees? An ordinance for children? Gardens, prairie grass? You name it. We're going to have, I was in the Air Force for 8 years, and I had a base commander that said, do we have to have a sign on every tree that says, don't pee on this tree either? I don't think so. I think we have enough common sense to all get along. And what I would say is, there are some people who have a pet peeve, and I will say pet, that they're against chickens. I would invite them to stop peering from behind their living room curtains, shaking their fists about the kids playing ball in their yard, and come out and begin living. Join us at all of the great volunteer groups that this city is lucky and fortunate to have, but encourages to have. The PHNRC, the library, there's a ton of them. Join us, meet your neighbors, start living your life. We saw during COVID the effects of what social wellness can do, and it really does have an impact on your longevity. You join us, you meet your neighbors, you get to know people, you get to like people. Heck, you might even like chickens someday and have fun doing it. And that's all I've got to say. Thank you for allowing me to talk.
Hi, my name is Nikki Moylan, 108 West Kenilworth. All right, good evening, neighbors, board. My name is Nikki Moylan, as I just stated. I live in Prospect Heights with my husband, soon to be 4 children, and our 8 hens and our dog. I will try not to repeat some of the things that were stated, but I do agree with the 2 residents who just spoke. I do want to point out a few really important things. The complaints that were made at the October board meeting were from 3 residents, 3 homes, all complaining about 1 residence. So I do think that's really important. The mayor also stated, you stated this evening, that there's only a few complaints a year, and that seems like not that many, and maybe we're making a little bit of fuss about a few people complaining. So I do want to make sure that the people who were complaining, that if there's an animal welfare issue, that it was investigated. I'm not sure what the results were of their complaints in October, but we do have ordinances in place that they put on the screen that addressed all of their concerns if you go back and watch the October meeting. So the things those residents were complaining about were vermin, number of chickens, smell, and noise, to which you mentioned this evening. Prospect Heights has ordinances in place to address each of these complaints. It was up on the screen, all under Title IX, Police Regulations, Chapter 1, Animal Control. I know other people tonight are talking about several of those issues. Some were just mentioned. I do want to take some time to go into the complaint about smell. I've been to numerous homes and farms that have 25 to hundreds of chickens, and when properly cared for, as Genevieve stated, they do not smell even when visiting close by, let alone at a residency or property next door. In fact, chicken manure should not be seen as a negative part of chicken ownership, but instead recognized for the helpful and effective byproduct that it is. Composted chicken manure, which is done naturally, is a wonderful soil amendment and helps plants grow and thrive. It also reduces the need to apply additional chemical fertilizers, so it's healthy and effective for gardening. In addition, we're on private wells here. It's better for our health and better for ourselves if we do not use pesticides on our grass with our water system. If there's an issue with smell, animal control may need to investigate to determine if there's an animal welfare issue. We moved here, just like they did, because of the allowance of chickens specifically, and because over 70% in our home of the homes in this community are on half-acre or more, which is unlike many of the surrounding communities that do not have the allowances or space. More and more people are becoming homesteaders and chicken owners for reasons of which I do think is important to mention: sustainable food source and control over our food quality, connection to nature, education, and family bonding. Those of us with children and grandchildren know that we teach our those kids about chickens, responsibility, animal care, the cycle of life, all really important things growing up. Not to mention, we're able to share our eggs with our neighbors, which we love doing. And again, that fosters the sense of community that we love here in Prospect Heights and allows our neighbors to not feel that they can't talk to us if they have an issue. So if you have an issue with your neighbors, talk to them. Let's start there, not at City Council. Additionally, pest control was mentioned. Chickens eat all the yucky stuff that we don't want around, including mice. That was mentioned in the complaints in October. And of course, self-sufficiency. In a society where food costs continue to rise and quality continues to go down, this gives us some control over the food we feed our families. So we appreciate you taking the time to hear from all of us tonight. We do urge you to recognize the importance of having backyard chickens. And as residents, we appreciate our current ordinances in place. I don't believe that we need more ordinances, regulations, or a waste of city resources. We need enforcement of current regulations as necessary situations arise to ensure a peaceful community and to ensure animal welfare. The only change I see needed is that this probably should not be a police enforcement issue, since their job is to keep us safe, but instead conducted by an informed and knowledgeable code enforcement officer. So please recognize the few complaints for what they are, a few voices that do not represent the majority. And while there may be an issue at the one residence they referred to, which I am not even sure if is true or not, it is not the reality for the numerous chicken owners in our community. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Becky Fiscone. I live at 213 South Maple Lane. So I agree with everybody that has spoken so far, but I'm gonna be a little bit different here, so we get a different taste, because I'm a different kind of person. I'm a crazy person. I was a crazy mom during COVID that got the stimulus check and said I've always wanted chickens. I was born here. I've lived here my whole life, 38 years. I moved back in with my mom because I miss Prospect Heights so much, and was like, we should get chickens. My mom is deathly afraid of feathers. She won't touch an egg. She hates eggs. And I was like, we're getting chicks. I came home with 4 baby chicks. Chicken math happened. They kept growing. We've had, I don't even want to tell you the number of chickens I've had in my yard, but I'm not going to lie. I'm going to be totally honest. I've had up to probably over 70 chickens in my yard at one time over the last 4 years. At different times. Currently, I do not. We've gone back and forth. But the good thing is, I will tell you, because of our city rules here, I was able to save so many lives. I've gotten calls from different, we're all part of, I'm sure, chicken Facebook pages of people that the city only allows them to have a certain number, and what would happen is 2 of those would be roosters, and so then they'd be either letting them out on the roads or posting that they needed to find a home, and I was the idiot that drove out and picked it up and took it because my city allowed it. I had a school that I can't name, but it's within 5 miles of here, that was doing a hatching project, and the principal called me and told me that they were going to kill 45 chicks that the kids hatched. And they were telling them that they were going to a farm. And I went to the school and picked up 45 chicks. And my husband almost killed me because I put them in our bedroom because they're 2-day-old hatched chicks. And so here I am at night with raising chicks in our bedroom for a week until I was able to find homes for them all. And I did within a week using Facebook and, you know, different people in the neighborhood that would take them on. So as much as, you know, you talk about numbers, we can do so much here in Prospect Heights with not having these tight, you know, rules of what you can and cannot have. Like I said, I still don't have this many. I'm not that crazy. You know, we also allow ducks. We've had ducks before. The ducks were helping eat the mice. There's so many things that Prospect Heights allows, and it's just incredible, and that's why we love it here, and we don't want, you know, that to go away. Another thing I wanted to mention is, because I am so paranoid about following rules, I did call Prospect Heights before I even bought the coop to make sure I could have chickens and what the rules were. And I was told it was okay, and I didn't need a permit, and I was fine doing it. There was no number. So I followed, I thought, my rules. I even went to all my neighbors surrounding my house and knocked on their door and said, I know this is going to sound stupid, but you don't know me, but I'm going to get chickens. Do you have a problem with that? Would you tell me if you heard my roosters? Would you come, I would want to know if I'm bothering you. All my surrounding neighbors were fine with it. I still have never had a complaint. I've had over 8 roosters in my backyard at one time. I will tell you that sometimes they don't crow at all in the morning. Sometimes it's when I get home from work and I go say hello, and then they all run around the yard, cockadoo like I welcome home. It's more than I get from my own kids sometimes. So, it's just such a way of living here, and I know people can point and say all the negative, but I wanted to give you some of the positive things that I've been able to do living here, and I wanted to open you up to that. And that's it.
Okay. Sorry, old eyes.
And if anybody has a written statement they want to leave with us that we can take into our account, we will have the video, but if it is, we'll take it. And like I said, we're going to take all these comments, review through them, and go forward. So if you want to drop them off after you read them, that's fine.
You can have mine when I'm done.
All right, thank
All
you.
right. Hello. My name is, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Christine Scheel, and I'm here almost on the 25th anniversary of the purchase of our house here in Prospect Heights. We've been here 25 years. We've raised 3 great kids who went to Prospect Heights schools, and they're fully grown, and they're all launched, and they're doing great. And we owe a lot of that to being in this community and raising our kids here. I also want you to know that I work in the field of agriculture. I have, over the years of my career, overseen the care of hundreds of chickens on farms and been hired by the ASPCA as a consultant on multiple animal rescue events involving livestock, including thousands of chickens. I have significant expertise in the care and keeping of chickens, including my current job. We came to Prospect Heights 25 years ago because we wanted to escape the crowds and the excessive regulation of city life. Prospect Heights promised a rural feel. Big lots, limited sidewalks, no bright street lights at night, lots of lightning bugs, and the ability to raise chickens as pets and for their eggs. Those who know me know that for many years before we raised chickens, we raised ducks in our yard for their eggs. Currently, we have 14 chickens. I have 4 more chicks on order, and they'll be here in the spring. I'll have 18 by the spring. Respectfully, sir, you're wrong about the 20 chickens giving you 20 eggs a day. I have 14 chickens right now. I get maybe 3 or 4 eggs a day because chickens only lay an egg a day for the 2nd year of their life. After that, their egg production declines, and we let our chickens live out their natural lives in our yard. We don't euthanize them when they stop laying eggs because they're livestock and egg producers, and they are also our pets. Oh, crap, lost my place. Oh, here we go. We don't have a rooster at the moment, but we have had one in the past. So many years of raising poultry in our yard. Again, we've been here 25 years. We've never had one complaint from a neighbor. Not one, never, no complaints. Chickens make wonderful pets. They are fun, funny, curious, smart animals capable of returning affection to each other and to their owners. They even have best friends in their flocks. They're an emotionally fulfilling option for people who crave the companionship of animals, but maybe cannot have house pets in their houses due to allergies. On top of that, they provide eggs. For people that wish to source their protein from well cared for chickens, there is no better way to ensure properly cared for animals than to do it yourself. For those who wish to engage in homesteading as a hobby, our big lots are perfect for raising your own food and providing your own eggs to your family. I imagine that's why people chose this community. I know it's why we came here. If you limit that ability, you will reduce our property values. That is why people come here. They come here because they want big lots and because they're interested in that rural feel here. Excessive regulation is not why people come here. Let me be clear on this point. Properly raised chickens do not smell. Properly raised chickens do not attract rodents. In fact, they eat them, as others have said. They don't attract any more predators to your yard than your rabbits, your squirrels, and your chipmunks. It's my understanding, based on the conversations with the city over the years, which I've had many, that we already have laws in place to deal with nuisance situations such as improperly cared pets, including dogs and chickens. In fact, it's honestly astounding to me that I can be surrounded on 3 sides by neighbors who leave their dogs out unattended for hours, and I have to listen to hours and hours and hours of endless barking from 5 different dogs around my yard, multiple calls to the city, and I've been told it's a nuisance law that handles it. We're not going to regulate barking dogs. We have a nuisance law. We'll send the police out. They will listen for the barking, and when they hear it, they will write a ticket. You can do the same thing for roosters. We don't need a new rooster for that. A rooster who crows excessively can be fitted with a collar to reduce the frequency and pitch of their crowing. We don't need a new law to cover that. We have a law. It's a nuisance law, and it can be, if it's applied to dogs, it can be applied to roosters too. We just need the city to apply the laws that we already have. We don't need new regulations, sir. We don't. I will have, in a month or two, I'll have 18 chickens. And that will give me maybe, like for the next year, that will give me still just 3 or 4 eggs a day because a lot of my chickens are old. And then in the times where our chickens were younger and we had more eggs, we shared them with our neighbors. Our kids had like a whole barter system with their friends where they traded some of our extra eggs to their friends who then baked apple cobbler and gave it back to us. And it was like a whole thing that our kids did, and it was a lot of fun. A really great way to engage in the community and to teach our kids a little bit about homesteading. Yeah, we don't need this. And it will really impact our home values if you do it.
My name is Gary Griesch. I live at 401 Etawa. I live on a property adjacent to a chicken keeper, just to his north. From my back windows, I can see the chicken coop and the runs. I have absolutely no problem with these chickens. They can get a little vocal, the girls, when girls don't get along, but it's no different than barking dogs. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cindy Fine, and we live at 605 North Elmhurst Road. We are chicken owners, and I just wanted to add to one of the comments about the property values. I'm also a real estate agent, and one of the beautiful things about Prospect Heights is that people do gravitate, the word is out, and people want to come here because of the freedoms that they can enjoy, not only with raising chickens, but as you said, having beautiful gardens and having a little bit of a old hometown feel. And I think if you restrict those things, you're really going in the wrong direction. I think instead of that, you should glamorize that, advertise that, and our property values will continue to go up, not only because of our great schools, but because of the freedom and the community that having the freedom to have chickens has brought to this town.
Hello. My name is Randall Brace. I live at 300 Linden Road North. I am also a chicken owner, as you might have guessed. I currently have 20 chickens. That's about the most egg-laying hens that I've had. My chickens make less noise than my neighbor's dog when they leave him out and forget he's outside for 10 minutes. I have never had one neighbor complain. On top of my egg-laying chickens, well, let me address one other issue real quick. Right now, I get about 1 or 2 eggs a day. As another person said, as my hens have gotten older, I have chosen not to euthanize them just so I can maximize egg production. And in the summer, I may get 10 eggs a day. In the winter, I may get 1. It's a seasonal thing with chickens. And as they get older, they lay less. In addition to that, as others have said, we have all the ordinances on the books. We have all the zoning laws on the books. Whether or not they have been followed or not is another issue. Again, it's an enforcement issue. And any noise complaints, odor complaints, anything can be taken care of per the law as it exists, per the municipal code as it already exists. In addition to the egg-laying chickens, I have also raised meat birds and turkeys on my property and had those processed, and again, for personal consumption only. At any given time, I've had as many as 50 birds on my property and not had, again, a single complaint about noise or smell, including the turkeys, which my neighbors, my elderly neighbors, all seem to wanted to love and come check out the hilariously stupid turkeys. So, again, I just wanted to point that out. As per the earlier slide about the neighbors that had, all the villages that had ordinances, this clearly kept out many local villages that had no ordinances on the books that do allow chickens. That list was picked to choose and show different options of regulating them, with the mind to regulate them. Naperville, St. Charles, Lombard, Westmont all have unlimited chicken ordinances, and they have no rules on the books about the numbers or roosters. So again, I won't even go into the city of Chicago, Los Angeles, New York City, Miami, Tampa, Cleveland, Cincinnati, any other number of large metropolitan cities. If we are truly a suburban community with large suburban lots that want to attract families, young families, to raise their families as they want to in today's terms, then we should not be adding more regulations to limit that. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Excuse me, Randall. The commission has a question, please.
Yeah, thanks.
Yes.
I just wanted to ask, if you talked about meat birds and turkeys. Do they need a structure as well to live in, like a chicken needs a chicken coop?
I chose to use a mobile chicken tractor, which was a secured, covered coop that kept them out of the sun and rain. And I was able to move it around my yard and to give them fresh pasture continuously throughout their life.
So they would need a structure as well?
It's a mobile structure, it's not a permanent structure.
But they need some kind of a place.
They need
Safety.
something to be safe.
That's
Yes,
the-
I did
think
not
that's the
free range
question.
them or, I mean, I don't know what the ordinance is on this because I didn't pursue it. An electric fence, like a solar powered fence, livestock fence might be an option, for example. But I did not provide anything other than that mobile shelter that was covered to keep them out of the sun, the direct sun and rain.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, can you guys hear me? I'm Tiffany Hinton. I live at 1011 West Wildwood Drive in Country Gardens. I'm gonna actually tell a story. So during the pandemic, I went into depression and our neighbor got cancer. And I grew up on a cattle farm. And what was interesting is I always wanted to go back to the farm, but we couldn't. And that was one of the reasons we moved to Prospect Heights 12 years ago, because we had larger lots for our children. We had well water. We could control the fertilizer or not the fertilizer. And being able to get the chickens during the pandemic was huge from a mental stability level, honestly. And it also ended up being a hospice thing for our neighbor. He would sit outside and he would watch as they would run around in the fenced-in area, and his wife would come over and thank us, and he passed away recently. But the other thing that I did is I did a lot of research before we got him. I hired a chicken coach. I bought a structure that was built, pre-built. You screwed it together. It was 2x4. It was about $5,300. We also did research on making sure that they were secure. So not only did we put up chicken fencing, we put up avian netting that we bought from a zoology site so they can't fly out. Part of that was to keep the predators away, but also I wanted to keep them contained. So I think there is this happy medium when we think about it between the benefits of the chickens, but also what it is able to provide for people that might need something in additional to therapy, along with being able to keep them as a pet and not just livestock. Because I grew up on a livestock farm. There is a big difference. And you become emotionally attached, where you don't always get that with livestock. So.
Hello, everyone. Name is John Brunner, live at 605 North Elmhurst Road. Been a resident for 22 years. I've been raising chickens for roughly about 7 or 8 years. We've started with 3. We had as many as 22. Unfortunately, yes, you're right, coyotes got some of them. We didn't realize there was a breach in the fence, but that's all been taken care of. But, you know, we have 7 now. We still get a decent amount of eggs. Really, the reason people move to this area is because of the schools, the family atmosphere, and because of the rules that are here. I think really what's happening is we're starting in life and in the world to cater to the minority more than the majority. And it's happening everywhere. It's not just happening there, right? It's happening everywhere. The minority is starting to win because nobody wants to stand up to them. So I think in this case, you have to look at that a little bit more. Thank you.
Love my crazy neighbors. Maya Wojdalski, W-O-J-D-A-L-S-K-I.
I'm sorry, can you please?
W-O-J-D-A-L-S-K-I. It took me 3 years to learn it. That's my husband.
Thank you. I appreciate it, thank you.
104 West Marion Street. So just to summarize really quickly, it appears that we do have several laws on books that address major issues. As much as I love my crazy neighbors, I also love the staff in the city of Prospect Heights. Whatever issue we brought in front of your staff, and thank you for that, there was a huge will to work with us to solve it. We always run the same issue, resources, right? time of the staff and money. It appears to me that this is going into the direction where we're gonna spend the money to pass new laws and the time of the staff on the laws that nobody wants. Thank you.
Hi. I'm Jamie Weichel. I live at 12 Robert Avenue. My husband and I have lived here for about 10 years, and through that time, we've had chickens in the neighborhood come and gone. And I just want to say, as a non-chicken owner, that we love it. I love everything about it. I love hearing the chickens in the background. I love being able to come for breakfast and get delicious eggs. I love being able to watch the chickens if the fabulous chicken owners go out of town and we get lucky enough to go there and take care of them. I think it's lovely, and it is certainly part of the reason that we moved here, because of that kind of like rural feel, the large lots, the freedom. And I agree, like, I think that we should be progressive in our laws and keep things more open and more free than going backwards. So we love the chickens, and we've never had a problem with smell, sounds, anything like that. So just as a non-chicken owner, we love them.
Thanks, you guys.
I agree.
Pro chickens.
Hi, guys. My name is Grace Martinez. I'm at 1213 Highland Drive. We've been residents of Prospect Heights for 20 years. We love the community. I look around this room of faces, and I see so many people in different volunteer situations that I've gotten to know. We are the people that are making a difference in our communities. We are the ones that are putting forth the effort to make changes, not only just for chickens, but for our schools. We've raised money. We're PTO. We're, the PNRC, PNRC. We're the volunteers for the police. Our Prospect Heights Citizen of the Year is pro-chicken. He couldn't be here tonight, but he's pro-chicken too. One of the things that I was gonna go over, because it was addressed in the meeting, the October meeting, was the issue of vermin. Vermin is an issue across the board. If you start researching it, it's not a Prospect Heights issue. It's not a chicken issue. It is an issue that is affecting everybody, and it's because more of global warming. Global warming allows longer reproduction times for the rodents, so therefore you have more of them. Wetter weather also provides them habitats that they flourish in. More food, more places to hide. While we do have predators, we don't have as many predators as can control the mice populations. If you do a Google search, do chickens attract mice? The first answer that comes up, quote, a common misconception about chickens is that they attract rodents. But the truth is that rodents are attracted to their food and water, not the chickens. Rodents are a nuisance and a hazard for backyard chickens. I can honestly say there's no one in this room that's like, yay, I've got mice! No one wants mice. They contaminate our food supply for our chickens. They attract more predators. We don't want the hawks. We don't want the raccoons. We don't want the coyotes in our yard. They're gonna eat our chickens. We don't want that. We're gonna keep them as clean as we possibly can, so that way we can keep our chickens safe, so we don't attract these predators to our lots, and to keep our food safe. Since we've gotten chickens, we have 13. Our most was at 15. One of them is a rooster. I've had no complaints. No one's ever called on us. We check in with our neighbors regularly. They can't hear our rooster. The only time they can hear him is when he's outside, barely, and they don't find him a nuisance. But they've actually made things better for our yard. They eat the Japanese beetles. We've been able to harvest more of our crops, because I would call us, an urban homesteader. We've got a huge garden, a small orchard, berries, and they eat the Japanese beetles. We've had better crops because of our chickens. They also love the grubs that the Japanese beetles grow from. They'll go around digging for the grubs. We've had less skunks in our yard because there's no grubs for the skunks to eat. We also had no mice. Not a mice. I was chair for the popcorn. I was popcorn colonel for the Boy Scouts. My garage was full of popcorn before I had chickens. I had mice. I lost a lot of bags to my mice, or to the mice. Since we've had chickens, we've had no mice. Chickens will also chase off the chipmunks and the squirrels. They don't like them eating their food just as much as we don't want them eating their food. Back in that October meeting, the one gentleman, Mr. Kleinschmidt, said, quote, "I have seen more field mice. It's like a highway going through my backyard," unquote. They also mentioned that the house that was being questioned was at 418 West Camp McDonald. His address, which was in the notes, is at 410 West Clarendon, 2 houses down, cross Clarendon, across the street. How is there a mice trail from there to there? Come on, let's be realistic. I mean, if there's a possibility if there's vermin, but it's not likely from the chickens. So with the codes that are currently in place, you know, we just want to make sure, why are the families that are in making things right? We don't have issues with vermin, we don't have issues with smell, we don't have issues with noise. Why are we being penalized for one house that could or may not be causing this issue? I did go a little bit above and beyond, because that's just who I am. And I created a petition that was distributed. When I printed it at 4:30 today, when I left work, there was 800 signatures on it. There's over 900 right now. 922. Thank you. I can email the updated list. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't even realize I ran out of time, but I do have that list
If you wanna
from.
just submit it here, we'll
Yeah.
take it down.
That's
Thank you.
Can I sign that?
You can just, we'll put it down as a supporter.
There you go. One thing I do want to make a quick comment on that is that if people did not update their cities, I was going through a lot of people present in this room today. I had to change their city from Chicago, from Arlington Heights to say Prospect Heights. I don't know everybody in Prospect Heights, so there could be more Prospect Heights people that have signed that, that are, say that they're other cities.
That's true, I had to change my city.
Okay, and then I also noticed, which there was a couple people that I know signed, because I did my own husband, like I personally did it, he didn't show up, so I had to manually type him in for some reason. So I don't know if there's missing names there too.
Where was the petition?
Change.org.
Change.org?
I can, I did send an email out to the ward members and to, like, the email address that said if you couldn't make it to the meeting to talk about it. And I put the link in there so that information you can see exactly. Basically, we're just asking to enforce the codes that we have. We don't want more rules.
And it's still active?
Yes.
It was also shared on Nextdoor, and then a bunch of the Prospect Heights Facebook pages.
Thank you for being active on the Prospect Heights Facebook group. That's really helpful.
Excuse me, Grace, I have a question for you. You know, and this is for everybody. One of the big issues that come about is, because there's no registration and coops are put in and we do have them, how are we supposed to enforce those issues if no complaints are coming? Because they are out there. We don't go driving by people's yards looking for violations. We don't do that. We
Yes,
don't.
you did. You didn't mind. I talked to one of your people. That's a lie.
Excuse
You
me.
did, for stickers. One of your men stopped and booked at my coop and almost walked into my backyard.
Excuse me.
So how are you saying you did it? That's a lie, sir.
We don't intentionally go out and look. We do.
I have it on camera, sir. Do I have to send you the footage?
So we do address when we get complaints. We do address those when they do come out. So if structures are built without permits, accessory structures, which has been the ordinance, and people are not doing that, and that's one of the issues that I raised about problems with enforcement, okay, is we do get permits for accessory structures and sheds. we do see accessory structures. So I'm asking a
Yeah.
question for us to, because everybody, there's been a lot of comments that we have a lot of ordinances on the books that are enforceable.
2 years ago, I called about the chickens, and I was told, as long as you're not putting concrete in, you don't need nothing.
As long as
No concrete being poured, there's no permit required.
No, my name's Dan.
I think it was a Dave that we talked to.
We don't have a Dave on staff.
It was a couple years ago.
So-
And I
so-
spoke to someone, and that's the whole reason we called about the chickens, to see what the rules were. And that's what I was told at the time, is as long as you're not pouring concrete, you don't need a permit. As long as it's not a permanent structure, you don't
Okay.
need a permit.
Hold
So
a
are you
second.
telling me it's something different?
The ordinance requires, under the zoning code, and this has been the ordinance forever in the city, since 1977, a definition of coops, kennels, dog, animals, farms, barns, those things are all zoning code related. They have to meet certain parameters and sizes, and to get that, permits are required. Otherwise, one of the issues we have is when people, we do get a complaint, some of the few, is that they've been there, now people have to change where they're located, and then try and move them, then we get into the argument. So the question I have is, you say we have ordinances on the books to enforce those, but if people aren't complying with what those rules are, how do we start the process? And that's just a
Yeah,
question, and we'll get,
absolutely.
excuse me, can,
Question? Is there any way to just, your biggest concern, I know in the beginning was asking, you don't know who has chickens and who don't. You know, on the village sticker receipt that you send us that says like, mark here if you have a dog, could you add if you have chickens, just so you don't?
So, hold on a second, please, to keep some control. I'm asking Ms. Martinez a question, please.
Sure. So, I mean, it is tough because, as the Fuscones mentioned, I too called the city and asked about the permits needed for the coops. I was told as long as it wasn't a permanent structure. Ours is a mobile coop. It is a big coop, but we move it, not in winter time, but over the summer. It has a mesh grate on the bottom that's chicken wire, so the manure falls through, and we move the chicken coop throughout the yard. It naturally fertilizes our yard, and it's not a permanent structure.
Okay,
So
that
that's-
answers a question, because as long as they're under the 200, and they're mobile, it's not a permanent. That's where I'm getting at, because there are some differences. Some people have permanent coops, some people have permanent runs, some people have, and this is an educational process, so it's not appointed, it's not accusatory, it's just to try and find some facts. So thank you for providing that.
So, can I ask a question? We were told the same thing. We used to have a portable coop, and we decided we wanted to make it a standalone coop, and so we called and asked, what is the permit process? And we were told the same thing, as long as it's not a permanent structure, if we're not pouring a concrete pad, if we can drag it across the yard and move it to another spot, then we don't need to permit it. So ours is like that. If you looked at it, you would think it was a shed, but it actually can be dragged anywhere in the yard. Now, my question to you is though, sir, what do you do if somebody builds a garage and they don't pull a permit for it?
We cite them, and but, excuse me, please. Your interruptions are not helpful, okay?
But he's right.
I also need to ask that if a question is being asked, you come up to the podium, because I do the minutes, and when you're sitting back there, I cannot hear when I'm going over the recording what is happening. Thank you.
It seems to me that we already have a law in place. So if somebody builds a garage or pours a concrete pad and builds a shed without pulling a permit, and a neighbor makes a complaint about that, then you go out and you're like, yep, that should have had a permit and didn't have one, then you cite them for it. So we already have a law for that too.
So again, it's the definitions of types of accessory structures and how they are met. And that's one of the questions. And I said challenges with enforcement, okay? And it has been in the 9 years that I've been here, okay? And it's not to call out on anybody, it's not to say it. We're trying to educate ourselves on how you guys are managing your chickens. And yes, the question is, I could not tell you today if we have 25, 35, or 150 residents that have chickens in this town. There is no tracking, there is no health code, and some of those properties do have structures that are semi-permanent or permanent. So,
Can I just ask about that? You mentioned earlier that the Department of Agriculture or USDA asked you questions. Is that under law that they're asking you questions that you're obliged to respond to? And is that the Illinois Department of Agriculture or the USDA?
The USDA has the traceability requirement. The Illinois Department of Agriculture, under their livestock premises, do request that properties that have livestock, and they define chickens as livestock, do a free registration on their website. And it's, again, to look at traceability and accountability if there's a health outbreak with chickens.
The Illinois Department of Agriculture has the same thing for beekeeping. And again, it's voluntary. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. For beekeeping, it's mandatory. I'm sorry, but yeah.
So, wait, I have a question for you.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Is there a reason you would be opposed to registering your chickens if it's for traceability of?
It's not the actual chickens, it's the premise where they're housed.
I'm not particularly. I'm reticent to give into the fear factor, like nomenclature of the avian flu pandemic, because kept chickens are not an infection vector for that. That is migratory waterfall issue. And it's an issue with large factory farm chickens where they have to destroy 1 million chickens because of infection. It's not an issue with homesteaded kept chickens. And so I don't like the concept of registering for that reason about avian flu scare, because it gets repeated, and it was repeated in the previous meeting as well that was recorded. So everybody that is uninformed about the matter likes to regurgitate that one as a big scare tactic. So that's the only reason I'm reticent to go that route. But personally, I don't have an issue.
I can add something about the bees, too.
Well, there are still a lot of people that have to go. I was just asking a question for my own educational purposes on structures too.
Sure, he's 100% right about the avian flu. But I'm wondering why we need a duplicate registry. If we already have a registry through the state, why do we have to register again through the city?
They want money.
You're saying that the state already asked us to register, right? So why do we need a duplicate registry here if we already have a registry?
As I indicated before, one of the issues that comes up is we don't know, and when we get the complaints, we would like to be able to inform people, have them get the information, know that request that they register with the states, and that it's just part of the state of Illinois allows the city to enact reasonable rules to protect the health safety of that part. It's not a money issue. It's not going to be, some towns on that list charge over $100 annually. No, please. Okay, I will not interrupt you when you get a chance to speak. Please do not interrupt me. Thank you. So it's not about money, but it's about understanding the processes, understanding where the chickens are, where the potentials could be, and there's no way that I would recommend, heck, I haven't recommended a fee increase for building permits in over 5 years, because I think we have a structure in place. It's not about the money, okay? It's about being able to manage a use of properties that's going on that is not being controlled. We have all kinds of permitted uses in our zoning code. Okay, and part of those are allowed to be happen by right. We allow chickens, but we do have other regulations about the coops, the accessory structures, the other issues in the code, that the only way that we can look at those to make sure folks are compliant, because I want you to be compliant, I want you to be compliant, I want everybody to be compliant. But we don't know if you're compliant if we don't know where they're at. And I'm not here to enforce tickets or citations. That's not what we want. We want people to have a chance to have what they have, but we also have a responsibility to know what the uses are within a residential district and where they're at.
Yeah, I think that having to register in the city when we already have a registry with the state is sort of intrusive over regulation. It's not fair to ask that of us. And it seems like the type of thing that's just going to grow. Like next week, it's going to be something else you're going to want us to register, and then the week after that's going to be something else we want to register. And it's not right. It's intrusive, especially when we already have a registry system in place. There is no need for it.
So can I ask you a quick hypothetical question? If a neighbor moved in next to you, and if I could have you come up, thank you.
Sorry.
If a new neighbor moved in and put up a makeshift coop that was completely neglected, how would you handle it? How would you want the city to handle it?
I would do it the same way I do the barking dogs that are around me. I go to my neighbor, I let them know, your dog's been out in the yard for a couple of hours, the barking is really loud, would you mind taking your dog in? I ask again, I try to be polite and get along. Sometimes I do a little of this because I don't want to hear the dog. I call the city, I say, you know, I've got a problem, I've got a neighbor, their dog is excessively loud, they leave it out for many hours at a time. The city tells me, we have a nuisance law for that. If you want that addressed, call the police, make a complaint with your name. So I did that. I called the police. I did exactly what I was told by the city. I called the police. I made a complaint with my name and said, my neighbor leaves his dog out for hours and hours at a time. They sent a squad car around. The squad car sat and listened, agreed with me that the barking was excessive, and he walked up and wrote them a ticket. And it was handled because we have a regulation in place for nuisance laws.
Good evening. I live at 600 North Elmhurst Road with my husband, my 3 kids, and my 9 chickens. I moved to Prospect
And what is
Heights.
your name?
Megan Polis. I moved to Prospect Heights in 2021 specifically because of my large lot and because we were allowed to have chickens. If we were to have an ordinance banning, like all-out ban or banning free ranging, I would probably move. I would not move immediately, but I would move. It is something that has been amazing for my children. My daughter has asthma. She cannot handle pets like gerbils, guinea pigs, parrots in the house. And this is a way for us to have that opportunity to have pets outside. They are pets. We also have 2 dogs. They get along with our dogs. They make way less noise than our dogs. They make way less noise than our 3 children playing on the trampoline. I would say that the trampoline is probably more hazardous. It is a safety concern. It is a noise concern. And my chickens avoid the trampoline like they do like a random coyote. Like they're like, oh, what is that? It is something that we value so much and feel so passionate about that I'm here tonight. I will be here again if it comes up. And everybody in this room is a doer. This is the pulse of our community. I'm the new generation. I moved here for this. So I would I'm just upset that this is even a conversation. Really bothers me, period. And that's where I'm at.
Let me first say no.
No, you're good, you're good. Sorry. My name is Gina Salefsky, S-A-L-E-F-S-K-I, and I live at 15 Robert Avenue. I'm a chicken mom. I'm also a mom of 2 kids and 2 dogs, and I love them all the same. I do want to say I'm a city girl born and raised. I thought the idea of chickens was insane, but my husband moved us from Arlington Heights to the country of Prospect Heights, and I got allergies and all those fun things once we got here because there's this stuff called grass and property. But anywho, before we decided to have chickens, we talked to our neighbors and we asked how they felt about it. Our neighbor was so enthralled with the idea that we were getting chickens because he's been trying to get his wife to get the chickens. So once we got them, they got them, and we had a happy little chicken neighborhood. I do want to say I do have the best neighbors in the world that come and visit, bring their children. Neighbors bring their grandkids over. They want to see the birds. They want to pick them up. They want to feed them. My kids play athletics. We have parties at the house. Teams come over. They all give scraps to my chickens. They give produce from our gardens and feed them to the chickens. They walk around carrying the chickens. Everybody loves them. Chickens are great for scraps, by the way, and not wasting food and throwing things out. They eat everything and keep our garbage load really, really low. My kids, I've had my chickens now for 10 years. They've grown up with my children. My Bella was a baby when we first got them, and we made her in charge of helping to pick out what color we should paint the coop, which is purple, and it was her choice, and that's where all of our ladies live. My kids have learned empathy, compassion, love, responsibility, all the things that you want to teach your children every day through our chickens. and I just want to keep them forever and ever. Amen. Thank you.
I have a question for you.
Ma'am, I'm so sorry.
Do you have a rooster, and did you ever have a rooster?
We did have a rooster. When we purchased our chickens, they were sexed, and they're sent to us with a hope to be all female. And Boots, our most beautiful girl, ended up being a boy.
There's no way.
My
Barbara was a Bill.
Yes. Yes. My children one day said, gosh, why does Boots keep wrestling with all the other girls? To which raised a red flag. We did relocate our rooster only because it wasn't a nuisance of a noise for us whatsoever. We just didn't want to keep producing more chickens. We just wanted eggs. We didn't want babies. So for that reason, we opted to rehome our chickens to a neighbor right down the street who also had 2 other roosters, and they all lived in harmony together.
Thank you. So the chicken's still in Prospect Heights?
Yes.
The rooster?
Yes. Well, maybe. At this point, that was 10 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. I'm Sarah Meyer. I live at 504 Gregor Court, Prospect Heights. We do have chickens. We did get a permit, and we did move our coop, and it was a beast to move. But we also knew that we're part of the city, and there's regulations, and so we wanted to honor those regulations and honor our neighbors, and we also wanted to make sure our coop, it looks like a little barn or a little shed, in our opinion. And so I wanted to share that, though, because being part of a city means there is being respectful and following laws and regulations. And so we followed that because we wanted to maintain that, and we've also appreciated that there is no number, so I can get more chickens, because I do have 4 kids. And because we homeschool, which means we eat 3 meals a day at home, we go through a lot of eggs, and we only have 6 chickens, and we have to still buy eggs because my husband's 6'5", we eat a ton. So it is nice to know that we can get 6 more this spring to be able to feed my family and not have to go to the store. But I wanted to say, we moved it. My husband, thankfully, is an engineer and figured it out, but it was a beast. But it was respectful of our neighbors, what the rules are in our community, and to be respectful to others, to make sure that we are in compliance. And so even though there are other cities who have a limit, having 6 chickens would be hard for us because we couldn't feed our family with 4 kids and boys that will probably be 6'5". They will eat 4 eggs by themselves pretty soon. So thank you for your time, and thank you for listening.
Wondering if, hi, Genevieve Sheree, 5 Alton Road, still have not moved yet. But I just wanted to address the legality of selling eggs in case this is useful for future reference. But under Illinois cottage food laws, you are indeed allowed to sell your eggs from your home. We do not. We use them, like many of you have mentioned, as barter or gifts. If somebody babysits, they get eggs. If somebody gives us a baked good, they get eggs. That's just how we roll. But I just want to read from the Illinois Department of Agriculture site. You may sell nest-run eggs from your own flock to household consumers. These sales are limited to direct sales to household consumers for their own personal use and must be sold on the premises where the flock is located. This type of shell egg sale does not require an Illinois egg license. Producer egg sales to licensed grading stations also do not require an egg license. So that's all I had to say. Just wanted to make everybody aware of that law.
Well, since I'm here, no. Michael Corman again. I just wanted to address, you had talked about the beekeeping, or the bee registration, and I'm a beekeeper as well. And it's a voluntary registration, and it's so that the Department of Agriculture can notify you if there's commercial pesticides being sprayed, so you can move your bees indoors. So it's to protect the bees, is the reason why there's the registration for bees.
So wouldn't that be the same for chickens? You don't want the chickens out if they're spraying a pesticide in the area?
Well,
Well, I mean, we can go in the house, obviously, we
but
can
yeah,
go in the
I
house.
wouldn't, I personally would not be opposed to registering my chickens at all, so.
Bees travel a lot further than
Yeah.
And they're more
Okay.
sensitive.
Do I say my name again?
I know you're.
Please.
Becky, sorry. I did want to mention, just because there's so much talk about roosters, I attempted to message Adopt a Bird Network. They're countrywide, and they did finally get back to me, and they said, please quote me if you want, and use this as a reference, that there is a huge animal welfare concern with unwanted roosters across this country. It gets progressively worse every year. The primary reason is cities like yours right now that allows hens and is going to start banning roosters. Animal shelters and sanctuaries are all over by you, and they become overwhelmed, and it finds and results in the unanticipated allocation of resources and funds towards additional housing to accommodate these birds for prolonged periods of times. Animal control will also get continuous calls in the local areas regarding dumped roosters. You will also get people complaining about loose roosters roaming the neighborhood. So that was something else I just wanted to defend. And then the only other thing I did want to say is, I know I shouldn't say, because everybody keeps saying you use the word pet, and it really bothers me, because the noun pet, it's a domestic or tamed animal kept for companionship or pleasure. And so yes, I can say that they are my pets. I will not eat them. My husband thinks I'm crazy because I go to Jewel and buy her chicken. I won't let him eat them. I mean, I love them as my pets. We use them with our kids for therapy. I mean, they're our pets. So I just want to get that through. If they were just an animal, I would not spend, I can't tell you, probably over thousands of dollars we spent in the last 3 or 4 years. We had to build a wheelchair for one of our chickens that hurt his leg. We've spent $5,000 at the Midwest Animal Vet in the last few years. If these were just livestock, we'd do it like they did in the West and put a bullet in its head and it was done. We really do care about these animals, and I know our neighbors do too, because we all message each other asking what happens if this happens and what can we do to prevent this. And so, yeah, so they really are like family.
I'm glad you come up because I do have a question for you.
Sorry, I didn't hear you, but I'm going to say one really quick thing. This whole meeting, this whole night, as widely publicized as this meeting was, there's not a single person in this room speaking against chickens. Not one.
Well, before you go, I do have a question. I believe earlier you said that if there's a rooster that does become a nuisance or a crow or that, what type of device is it? A collar, you said?
It's a crow. It's called a crow collar.
Okay,
There's a few different vendors that sell them.
okay. Because one of the issues is trying to learn, are there solutions in those situations where there is potential nuisance calls? So.
I don't know, I think all of this is a minority. Like, this is a knee-jerk response to a minority population. And the rooster, apparently in question, that crows a lot, is right near my house. I can hear it. It doesn't bother me.
I will tell you, and I can't name addresses and stuff, I've been the director since June of 2015. And every year, the primary calls, and we don't get a lot, believe me, and I stated that at the previous meeting, and I stated it again tonight, but the number one call is from residents who are being disturbed by roosters, okay? So that is what, one of the things, so I'm trying to educate myself on as much as everybody else, but if there are solutions, that may be something to consider. Okay, that's why I'm asking.
Sure, I understand, but is it the same resident who's just calling a lot, or the same 2 or 3 residents who are calling a lot?
No.
Or is it a lot of different residents calling?
Or what if they think we're breaking the rules because they don't know that we can have roosters?
No,
I think a lot
no.
of people are uneducated.
The issue is we have an issue, and I've got an email from a person that likes their neighbors but does not like the 5:30 a.m. wake-up call, okay? And has a hard time wanting to talk to the neighbor. Well, our staff is not here at 5:30 in the morning. The police are usually having other calls, and there's, at evenings, limited manpower, just because of the way it's staffed. So we have to take those calls, whether they're anonymous, which we do take, whether they're documented as a complainant, and all their information is kept private. But we do have to investigate, we do have to ask, okay? Otherwise, it's disrespectful to that individual to not take their concerns at value, just like you're here tonight speaking on the issues. And we, you know, as I said earlier, this is not to ban chickens, okay? But to come up with reasonable solutions to address the issues that were raised. Those individuals went to the city council on that night, presented to the council. We were directed to come here to try and do some fact finding. So that's what we're is. The issues on the slides to address your concern is not the hand pick. It was a couple hours of just sitting at the computer looking reasonably close to what others are doing. Okay, that's it. I know there's hundreds of other municipalities that may or may not allow that. This was not done as an all-inclusive issue. It was just some of our surrounding neighborhoods, some of our surrounding cities, how they have approached it. Okay, that's all it was. So, and that's why we're here tonight. And you did make a big point. You're here to show your support. Thank you.
Okay, so I have some information on roosters. I actually did a lot of research on rooster noise because I have 4 roosters. And we never intended to have roosters, but a lot of times when you order chickens from the hatchery, you can't pick. And then when your kids are attached to it, you can't say, well, I'm gonna take it up to Wakanda and have so-and-so slaughter it. That doesn't always go over very well with children. So I did a lot of finding. Some roosters can crow up to 130 decibels. Not a lot. Most of them are around that 90 decibel range, which is the same as a dog barking. A police siren is 120 decibels, so is thunder. An airplane is 100 decibels, and we are on the O'Hare flight plan. A human yelling, so if you've got kids next door or a neighbor yelling, that's 125 decibels. A rooster's crow lasts 1 to 2 seconds. We know that other animals and even humans can be loud for a lot more than 1 to 2 seconds. There are also quieter breeds. So if we're thinking about roosters and Orpingtons, Cochins, Brahmas, and Silkies, which I have Silkies, they actually sound like a dog squeak toy. They're such a dwarf chicken that we can't hear them in the house. The neighbors really can't hear them unless they're walking right by our property. The other interesting thing when I was looking up is a rooster crows about 15 times a day, and that's it. Their body and their physical strength can't do more than 15 crows. So it's just something to keep in mind. You know, 2 seconds, that's 30 seconds out of your day. Now, if you've got, like I do, a couple of roosters on the property, that extends the time. And then if we look at the inverse square law of physics, which is around sound, for each doubling of distance from a square point, the sound pressure decreases approximately 6 decibels. So if we even say a rooster is crowing at 130, which is top decibel, we get out 20 meters, around 60 feet, it's already below 90 decibels. And if you get out 100 feet from wherever that coop is, it's below 75 decibels. So it is an interesting point to think about from a hearing perspective when you are talking about roosters.
And I think that's one of the issues in where property line setbacks come from. Okay, so that's trying to increase the space between property lines so it creates a further distance between buildings or structures. That we also have requirements that the coops are supposed to be kept so far back from the front property line, all accessory structures, which all aid, regardless of the structure, to try and lessen any noise impacts those accessory uses individuals can make. So thank you for that information.
Is it true that roosters only crow during daylight hours?
That is not true, and I will tell you, and I know this because I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Like, I'm already past my bedtime.
do your
Sorry.
explanation to the microphone?
Okay,
Thank
so Gina's question was, is it true that roosters only crow during daylight? It's not true. They actually will start crowing when they realize the sun is coming up. So right now, I have roosters crowing around 5 a.m., but majority of the time, it's not until the sun starts to break that the rooster starts to crow. So you're not going to hear one in the middle of the night unless he's protecting his flock. Like if you get a possum or something inside your coop, the rooster is going to sound an alarm because that's his job. His job is to sacrifice himself to save the ladies. That's like their whole ingrained DNA. The rooster will also stay outside at night until all the hens are back inside. So if you have them out in like a fenced in area, or even you think about a dog run, the rooster won't come in first. They will come in dead last, and if one of the hens is being stubborn, it'll stay out there well past dark because that's just their DNA. So the other thing to think about is if we are raising them for eggs, having a rooster on the property is the sacrifice so that you continue to get your egg population because he'll put himself out before the coyote or whatever else is available.
We haven't lost one chicken due to having a rooster.
All right. Is there anybody else new? I want to give opportunities, make sure we give up.
Is there an age restriction?
Nope.
All right, then you can
Nope.
go ahead.
Do I have to give my name?
Name and address for the record.
I am Bella Slevsky and I live at 15 Robert Avenue, Prospect Heights. And I wanted to say that I love my chickens. I always get to help feed them and make sure they get in at night. And it's always really sad for the house whenever we lose one. It goes around the house. None of us like it, but we get really attached to our chickens, and I like being able to go out and see them as they're like my siblings almost, going out to see them as my friends and my family, and being able to help take care of them.
Can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
Does your mom like the chickens more or you?
Be careful, be careful.
You don't have to answer that.
I'm Adam Torres, 23 Stonegate Drive, East. My English is not too good, so you gotta listen good. Reason of I'm here is because I think all of you guys there, with all my respect, Sunday morning around 10, you want to have couple over easy, isn't it? Don't you feel like a 2 over easy is really good for your health? Don't you bring it up alive? What's wrong with the chickens? I don't see nothing wrong. I got 3 chickens, and I have a Pancho. That's a boy. I name it Pancho.
Pancho.
Yeah. Now, see, when you have chickens or any other animals, if you connect with them, they are like part of your life. Soon I ride on my truck, on my driveway, my Pancho is there waiting for me. See, and he stepped on my hand here. I feed him here on my hand. That's a big Pancho. So, but I understand too, you got rules. And for all you guys, rules are good. There's nothing wrong with that. So we should come to a point between you and us and get to a final decision. Okay, that's all I can say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Arik, and whenever I get home...
Hold on a second. Eric? Arik, what's your last name and where do you live?
Arik Viscone. I live in 213 South Maple Lane.
Okay.
Prospect Heights, I believe.
The floor is yours, sir.
All right. Every single day, I wake up to my roosters crowing, which I like because I just think it's really relaxing. And then every single time I get home from school, I quickly go out and collect the eggs. And then when I'm collecting the eggs, I spend time with the chickens. I believe that we should keep chickens because chickens are therapy. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
My name's Tim Moylan, live at 108 West Kenilworth in Prospect Heights. We have chickens. We moved to this area specifically for chickens. That was said by many other people. A question I have is, One woman talked about when they heard a barking dog and they complained to the city and went through with it, the citation was issued. Was a citation issued for this house that's been complained against, or has any citations ever been issued for roosters?
The hard part, I can't speak to the police department. And 90% of the calls go to the police department on noise complaints because that's the section of the ordinance it's under. What we usually get is an after the fact, later in the day, the next day, at a later time, the complaints. And then when we go out to the properties, we try and listen, we try and hear stuff. And to be real honest, I have only heard crows a few times in the distance, okay? Couldn't tell you which property. That's not important. But we can't issue the citations. I don't know if the police have unless we actually hear it. What we have done is advise people when they've called about that is, please understand, your roosters can't cause a nuisance. You can't make noise. You may have to do other things to try and limit their crowing.
Yeah.
Again, in our department has not, just because it's, like I said, it's a difficult ordinance to enforce, even for the police department. Because most of the times with barking dogs, bring your dog inside. Only on the rare occasion, the extreme occasion, are tickets issued. Okay, that's the reality. We try and gain compliance through other measures. For example, I had one, they moved not the young lady that spoke earlier about the permit, it was in the wrong place, they moved it, cooperated greatly. So we've had some success. The problem is we've got others that we've been told from neighbors don't comply, but yet they don't want to tell us exactly where because they don't want to complain about their neighbors. So we're trying to find a happy medium here.
Right. And yeah, and I think others have said this too, but encouraging that, talk to your neighbors about it before calling the police. And yes, I would not want to have the police making these calls for nuisances, but it sounds like it's only a few a year. And if that's the case, then yes, I would also concur with what everyone else has said, is enforcing the existing regulations. And if there are problem houses, go after those. If there are other already in place zoning things that you have the power to take care of a problem house versus trying to enforce regulations on, it seems like, the much larger city, which is going to drain much more city resources and money versus just focusing on the few calls you get and the same method that would be done for a dog or another loud noise.
To let everybody know, issuing a permit for a garden shed, a gazebo, a covered pavilion, an accessory deck is what are part of responsibility. So when we look at it, looking at the zoning requirements for chicken coops, it's part of what we do, and it's not an overburdensome task. Okay, so it's that part of it won't do. Where it comes into a time consuming is after the fact, trying to chase people for compliance. Following up on advisory notices, following up on deadlines, following up on those other issues is where staff time gets wasted. And then if we do have to write a ticket, then we have to go to court and adjudication. So now we have more staff time, we have more resources, instead of the other way, if we could get, some upfront compliance so we don't have to chase. Okay, so that's just to let you know how we do it. And we don't believe that right now, with the number of folks here and with what we have, that it would be any burdensome to what we do already, to start from. What becomes a problem is after the fact enforcement. That's where our waste of time and our time consumption comes in.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay.
Real quick, Tim Selewski, 15 Robert Avenue. Had chickens 10 years, love them. The kids have grown up with them, like my wife said. But I just had a comment to make about what I heard a little while ago, that many people here seem to do due diligence and made phone calls to try to find out acceptances of coops or whatever. And I'm hoping that maybe comes, you guys remember that we did try, or people did try, to get the proper rules when you guys do make some kind of regulation or this all comes to an end. Whether or not your staff was educated enough, how they were educated to tell us the proper information, I hope that's taken into consideration and that doesn't,
And what I heard tonight is, yes, how is it related? Is it a portable? Is it a temporary? Is it permanent? Where's the location of the fenced area if it's a permanent? Those may not have been asked. You know, I'm not involved in every of those, one of those discussions, okay? So one of the things my takeaway is how to get this information out to the folks that are doing this of what our guidelines are. Because I don't, you know, a lot of you have said you just did it, you didn't really know. Or if you did try and call, how the question was asked or how the response, you know, a gentleman who has the portable coop. Well, there is no permit for a portable coop, okay? There is no regulations for that, so the answer would have been appropriate. If someone else heard it, depending on how the question or how it was responded, may have dictated. So one of the things that I'm viewing here, one of my takeaways right now, is to look on possibly wherever this goes, a specific handout related to backyard chicken keeping. Okay, that's just an observation tonight, and it's a high-level observation, okay? We'll spend some time going through the comments and going through everything else that was said, but I think that's a takeaway I've heard. From a staff perspective, I don't know about anybody else at the council. The zoning board, they can speak to that at either tonight or at a later date, but I would like to continue to have other folks unless you have more to say.
I don't. Thank you, though.
Well, thank you very much, Tim. So if anybody else would like to come up.
I don't know if this microphone comes down or not.
It does.
That's good. Rebecca Torres, 1200 Sherwood Drive. My dad's Adam Torres. We moved to Prospect Heights in '85, so almost 40 years ago. Aside from me, I have 5 siblings. We've all moved away and come back to Prospect Heights and all own homes. 5 out of 6 of us own homes in addition to my parents in Prospect Heights. We are all chicken owners. They are our pets. Our coops are clean, and they really have helped us with, like many people here have said, mental health, but also connected us to our neighbors where we can, you know, exchange eggs for pastries, or even just to get to know our neighbors, which, you know, we hadn't maybe made an effort to do so prior to having the chickens. We also have bees, and we give people bees, honey. And in regards to like the sound of the roosters, you know, we do have, as people have said, sounds of dogs, sounds of other birds making noise at 4 or 5 in the morning. And why can't roosters become part of our soundscape here in Prospect Heights? Like, it's another sound that, you know, our family's from Mexico, and when we go back, that's just part of the lovely noises that are part of the community. I don't see a problem with it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be brief. Brett King, 8 West Camp McDonald. There's a lack of non-chicken owners at the podium, so I thought I'd add my 2 cents. I have no horse in this race. I have no chickens. I agree with everything that's been said tonight. From my perspective, I hear 2 conversations that are happening. One is the chickens and the noise violations, and that's one thing. But from where I see things, I work in the chemical and petrochemical industry. Any policy that hasn't been touched in 10 years, I'm naturally apprehensive of. Things change, things need to be updated. There are reasonable compromises that you can come to if there are problems that you have or you foresee. I had heard somebody say that this is becoming more popular, there's more people getting into it. How are you going to protect the chickens and those people, make sure that they do the right things? If I got a 4x4 shed and I wanted to buy 100 chickens, should I do that? Nothing to stop me from doing that, from what I understand and what I've heard from this forum. But I would say that this is a community of experts. They're providing their expert opinion and their experience. We should listen to them. But the policies that you're going to review, the rules or regulations that you want to update, should reflect what they see are the real problems and the things that they would like to address. I would say, I would task the community with the suggestion for a pamphlet, this kind of educational opportunity to make sure that your coops are built the size that they should be. They should be however many feet away from the easement, whatever it is. That's the problems that you should be solving. Otherwise, I'm in full support of everything you've all been saying, and thank you for educating me. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who hasn't had an opportunity to speak that would like to have an opportunity? You know, we do still have quite a few folks that have not had an opportunity.
There's one more.
Okay.
Hello, Greg Wojnarowski, 104 West Marion Street. I think it's pretty clear that we all love chickens. I don't have any yet, but we probably will. I just wanted to make sure that, you know, we don't lose focus of why we're here. So the reason why we are here, the way I understand it, is because somebody complained about noise. So because you limit number of chickens or you limit the structure where the chickens are, will not address the noise complaints, because you may still have 6 chickens that may be making a lot of noise. So my point being is that I think it's more important to really make sure that the owners are responsible, which I think, you know, all of us are, or people who are keeping chickens are. And but if you decide to suggest any limitations on number of chickens, it will not necessarily address the noise. So again, we're going back to the ordinance for noise. So again, why are we even here?
Noise was part of it. There were other issues that were raised at that meeting, and because they made a presentation to the city council, this is the working group for the council. This body is that group that's is tasked with research, finding out the information, synthesize the information and materials, and then make a recommendation to the council. It may be do nothing. It may be come to some, you know, educational materials. It may be some minor changes. We don't know yet what that is, but we can't go forward until we hear from those folks who are, to make sure that we hear what the positions of those folks are at. And that's why we're here tonight.
No, absolutely. And then just, you know, the important part is to really make sure that you cater to, and I know you're just here to listen to the opinions. I think it's very important to really keep in mind that the majority of us, and this is by far not the full representation of people who like livestock or, you know, chickens, bees, and so forth. But I think it's very important to really keep in mind that the majority of people who move to Prospect Heights move for the very reason. So if you have, again, I'm just assuming 3 residents who are annoyed by chickens, maybe it's better for them to move to other villages than, you know, so many of us to move away. Thank you.
We did provide them with a list of options.
Well, with all due respect, those folks are residents, they're your neighbors. Some of them are longstanding before the city was a city and understood the issues. So again, it's not that simple of a solution. We understand that, but we do want to be respectful of all neighbors. And one thing I have, and this is a question for me, and maybe the zoning board also wants to know, does anybody in the room in your chicken network know how many properties in town have chickens? What? You know, how many properties do you estimate from your chicken network? Obviously, you are connected, you know, and you know each other. Do you guys have any?
We're not all involved in the same groups, we have sometimes different groups, so I would say
75.
So my original estimation was fairly close?
50 to 75.
Okay.
That we know of, based
Okay.
on, we've done a lot of communication recently, obviously, because
Okay.
but see, like 5 people, 1 family signed it, so it's hard to say how many homes.
Yeah, households, I would say it is probably upwards of 75. I thought it was maybe closer to 50 until
this meeting became publicized and more people came out as chicken owners, you know.
But there's also a lot of non-chicken owners that are pro-chicken that still want the
Right, 900
the
plus,
options.
yeah.
And understand, it's just a question that I asked, trying to put some perspective into the size of the issue. Okay, that's all it is, you know, what are the size? So,
I'm so sorry, I realize I'm a little outspoken on this, and I'm sorry, it does feel like it's an emotional thing for me because I'm stressed about it, but, so it feels a little bit to me like it's kind of a foregone conclusion, like you came to this meeting already deciding that you need to add regulation. So I would, and maybe that's not true, maybe you really haven't decided yet, but I would beg you to please, if you do decide that you need to add some additional regulation, to hire professional help. Because you can't learn about chickens in a few hours on the internet or reading a couple of books. I do this for a living. I've done it for many, many years, and I still don't know everything. You did some reading, you did some research, and you came here
I was
with an
born
idea
and
that-
raised in northern Minnesota on a dairy farm, lived next to the Land O'Lakes, largest turkey-producing factory in the state of Minnesota. I had chicken farms. I'm very versed in agriculture. But, okay, those issues is not important right now today. Give me an understanding, but I'm trying to understand the issue from your perspective, and that's what this body is trying to do.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Again, I've been up here several times. I wanted to speak to something Tim mentioned earlier about having called about the zoning ordinance and about what was required. I had a tough shed built. Permits were taken care of with regard to that. I built my coop into portion of that and left the run, and I attached that to the shed, okay? My interpretation from reading, and I had called and said no foundation, no permit. So again, based on my reading of the municipal code, as well as calling, I was told this information, added this costly structure to the side of my shed, which is open floor, open air. The shed isn't, the run is. And when one of the permit folks was by our house for a different issue, for something we were having permitted, and mentioned it and talked to my wife about it, and was kind of giving her a hard time about it, and kind of like let it slide, I guess. I wasn't there, but again, back to Tim's point, if we're gonna clarify the code, that I would hope that there's some sort of remedy for us that have taken these actions, whether or not we have written proof of this conversation that we had or not. I mean, it would be very costly for me to go dig up 6x6s that I have partially buried and all this wire in my floor to protect them from predators, right? Like, so I would just like that to be considered if we're gonna go through this clarification of the code and what an accessory structure means in the context of chicken coops. That's all, that's my request.
And folks, that's one of the other reasons we're here. The code has not been touched since 1977. And that when it was written. And there are different ways that they're construed. And the code says open or not open air or covered is still considered an accessory structure. So getting to understand the issues with everyone so that if we go forward with something, it's something that can be well understood and well help both the city and the residents.
Would that be something that would be fined for?
Haven't got even to there. The current, Grace, right?
Yes.
Under the current ordinance, there are fines and penalties for that. From an enforcement standpoint, we never go straight to tickets, okay? We go to work with, as the lady stated earlier in her comments, you know, they found out what the rules were, they were wrong, they moved it to gain compliance. Our goal is to gain compliance with the rules that are established, okay? And that's, you know, from a city staff perspective, that comes down. Our last avenue is to go to tickets in court. That's the last thing we want to do, okay? But part of it is to be able to look at ordinances that may be outdated, you know, from 1977. And are those restrictions so that everybody comes at from the same approach? Why they put the terms in 1977, I wasn't here, don't know, but we have to deal with today's situation, okay?
Can I ask another question?
If you come up to the podium.
So with potential changes to the code, you know, let's say you guys decide that limitations are put on the chickens, the number of chickens that you can have. For us that are existing with larger flocks, would there be like grandfather clauses put in place? Or what would like happen if, you know, the new codes do not?
Those are all questions that will have, if that comes, will be publicized, will be reviewed by attorneys, will be brought up, we will look at the issues that the codes allow, okay? We're doing like I stated earlier, we're trying to find out the facts, what the real conditions are out there.
Okay.
And we do not want to penalize people.
Right. Well, like, you know, I have a rooster with no complaints. I don't want to rehome him. He was a rescue. He came to me because he couldn't have him where he was moving to.
And again, you know, that's something that, you know, maybe was not considered in other places. Maybe, it was stuff that I don't think anybody at this dais was aware of. You know, that there's a way for people who have roosters that may be a nuisance, could possibly control them without sacrificing.
Perfect.
that. Okay, again, those are all things we have to wade through, look at
Absolutely.
and stuff. And so that's the approach that is going to be taken.
I have a question for you before you sit down.
Absolutely.
So one of the issues has been chickens running at large or getting out of the yard. And we do have, animal control code that says it's unlawful for animals to run at large. How do you what's the best way to keep chickens in your yard? I mean, does a fence work?
Absolutely.
I heard netting for one person. I've heard keeping them contained in a run. I think in one of the emails, they talked about clipping the wings. So what are the effective ways of keeping the chickens contained?
So having a fenced-in yard, if you're going to free-range them, so like our yard is completely fenced in on 4 sides.
So a 6-foot fence would be adequate?
Yes, absolutely, that would be adequate. On 3 of our, so the 2 sides are 6 foot. The back fence that we share with the neighbor behind us is their fence, and it's a 4-foot chain link. So they could, depending on the breeds that you have, could fly over that 4-foot fence. The easiest remedy is cut their flight feathers. So it's like getting a haircut for us. You clip the wings, the feathers on them. It doesn't hurt them whatsoever, and they're unable to fly over. Of my flock of 13, I've got 2 flighty birds. The rest are they're considered dual purpose, so you could potentially eat them once they're done laying. We won't, but they're girthy, they're heavy, they can't get off the ground. But I've got 2 that when the first day we brought one of them home was on the shed's roof, and we clipped her wings that same day. So clipping the wings, some people whose yards aren't fenced in, they can do a fenced in run. That is an option. We like our birds free ranging because they eat the grubs, like I had mentioned previously. They control the pests. They dig up the dirt, so they go ahead and help us loosen the soil for our gardens. They fertilize the grass in the yard. They control the weeds. For us, it's a better situation. We feel like our birds are healthier. Since this winter, well, the winter is hard too, but we had 2 hawk attacks in the past 2 months, and we've lost 2 of our birds. So we put up temporary fencing, and they're enclosed for winter. Once summer comes around, they will go ahead and be able to free range because they'll have the hiding places again. But since they've been cooped up, they have not been happy. We talk about, these animals being having feelings, and one of the hens that passed away was my rooster's girlfriend, as we call him. He was a bad rooster. He did not protect her. But he has been depressed. He doesn't leave the coop. I don't even really hear him crowing at all. So, these guys have feelings. They run up to us. They jump in our laps. They join my husband for coffee on Sunday mornings when in the summertime. So these are not, just livestock for us.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I have a question for you, Dan. I think it's dangerous to call them as pets, only because I'm guessing we have a number of pets. Something in our code that would restrict having 13 pets.
Yes,
So-
that same animal control ordinance limits the number of pets a household can keep. So
We need to revisit that.
I've seen other municipalities use the term poultry.
when looking at this, and this is just, it was given to me by the council, okay, is where does the regulation start? Under the USDA, under the State of Illinois Department of Agriculture, and they define chickens as livestock, okay? And that's how people have kept them, used them, what they mean to them individually may change their personal definitions of what they are. But when we look at the governing authorities above us, which we have to do, that's where we can't go and make those definitions up. We have to follow how the state and regulates and calls them. And that's why it's listed as registering your livestock premise. So it's not that we discount, from a staff perspective, how you feel about those individual animals, but it does trigger other parts of the ordinance if we're going to define them as pets. That's it, okay? And we allow pets in multifamily. We don't allow chickens in multifamily properties. Why? Because those people don't control the lands in which they're at, okay? So we have to be careful if we're going to think about changing definitions, which I don't think we can, okay? Because that will put more restrictions on you under the code currently today. And that would, I don't think, benefit anybody.
Could I just address Commissioner, her question, because I had 8 chickens. You just take 2-foot chicken wire, and you could put like a tomato stake, every 6 feet. Like I used to keep them out of our garden. They would go to the garden, eat the flowers, or my neighbors. So it's a real easy thing to stop them. I never had any that flew over the chicken wire.
Fences that have a hard top, they can jump and land on. But fences that have a floppy top, like he's saying, like chicken wire, like 2, 3, 4 foot chicken wire just staked in, they cannot see a place to land. They don't see a place to land when they go up, so they don't even try. So like I only have fence maybe 30 inches tall between my garden, which I do not want my chickens eating all my produce, and where I let my chickens roam when I let them out to free range a little bit. They have never one time gone over that fence. So just to clarify.
If at this point in time, Chairman, the floor it's your meeting.
So if we're all spoken out, if there's no more comments, we like to thank you for sharing your experience and your knowledge and everything that you've given us. Again, just so that we understand, we are here as a listening body. That's all we do. The council asked us to do a job, which is to invite you and do exactly what you did. You were perfect. So we listen, and the council will make the ultimate decision. We are an advisory body. That's what we do.
The next steps going forward from here, the staff will go through all the notes. I've got 5 pages of notes. I have access to the videotape because this was recorded. It will show on Prospect Heights TV, okay, at a later date. We will go through the issues. Most everybody signed their name and address. Some of you I have email addresses from because you've emailed our office. If we have any questions, I will review out. It may not be 30 days, okay? There's no time limit assigned to us to get a change back, okay? So we're gonna take our time, we're gonna review the data, we'll share that. It will come reported back to this body for further discussion. And depending on what the recommendations are going to be, they will be publicly announced, they will be agendized, the meeting will be there. You will all have the rights to participate again, to hear what suggestions. Some of you, I definitely will be reaching out to try and understand better some of the issues as we move forward. Again, this is not something that we were told by the alderman had to be done in 60 days, 90 days, 120 days. But it is something that they asked us to review, and we will take our time and do it in a constructive manner, take your comments into account, and report them back out to this body.
I think most of us would invite you to do a cavalcade of chicken homes and come visit and see what it's like.
To be real honest, there were a couple people that I've recognized. I've been in their yards and have met some of their birds, their chickens, their ladies. One gentleman has a flyer, and she visits every one of our guests that does an inspection. So every time I came to his property to do an inspection, she would fly out of the coop, the rest of them would stay, and then run, and she'd come and follow me around while I did the inspection.
The
Okay.
head hen.
What?
That's the head hen.
Head hen, she had.
She's the boss in
Yeah.
charge.
So, again, like I stated earlier, it's not to prohibit, okay, and get rid of chickens. That's not the goal here. But as was stated earlier by a couple people, and not as I stated, the ordinances as they're written have some issues. Now, are they insurmountable? I don't know. Do they need changes? But they do need to be reviewed periodically, and that's where we're at.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
What do you guys do with the chickens when it's like 1 degree outside?
Normally stay in the coop.
They stay in the coop? They stay outside though?
Wrap it in plastic, yes,
Okay.
like from Home Depot.
If you keep the wind out and you keep the moisture from accumulating, then they will not have issue. Even in like the Arctic polar vortexes that we had a few years ago, my chickens were fine. Just this last week, they're fine. They just stay inside more, and then they nestle together on their roost bars to stay warm.
They molt in the fall, and they shed out their summer feathers and grow in a downy undercoat of heavy winter feathers, just like wild outdoor birds do.
Yeah,
There's also, there's different breeds. There's cold weather breed chickens, cold tolerant chickens, and there's hot weather breed chickens. So breeds that we have here in Chicagoland, you may not want if you live in South Florida, because there are different varieties of chickens. I actually have Brahmas on our property, which are considered a giant chicken. They're from the Himalayan mountains. They are cold tolerant up to negative 50 degrees because they were bred originally to live up in the mountains. And so as a chicken keeper, you do that research before you go and get the birds, so you know that you have the right birds. But you're right, you wrap it in plastic. We have polycarbonate sides that screw on in the winter, so it becomes like a greenhouse effect. You can do deep lither method, so think about the composting creates heat. There's a lot of options there. There's also, when you talked about water earlier, there's those livestock trough things that they drop in horse troughs. If you have the right electrical setup and you have it done correctly, then you don't have to worry about your water freezing. Otherwise, you have these 1.5 gallon things that you bring in and out of the house 2-3 times a day so that they have fresh water.
And who has, I know you said you had 13 chickens. Anyone have more than 13 chickens?
I have 29 right now.
29? 20?
14 with 400 or so on 18.
18?
You missed, I also kept meat chickens and had them processed, and I've had at any given time up to 50 chickens on my property without any smell or noise complaints.
Okay.
Me too. Over 70 with 10 Muscovy ducks.
Selewski's have 30.
Okay. What?
What was it?
Do we have time to comment?
Yeah,
So-
folks, if you give the ZBA.
I'm gonna close the meeting.
Yeah.
So if,
No, that's just a normal.
Guys, give us 1 second.
It's a hard, it's a hard one, but.
If there are no more comments, I need to close this public meeting just so that we can move on. If there is somebody else who has something to say, go ahead, but otherwise,
Thank you.
I mean, we're not done. We're gonna speak. You guys are listening well. You can listen and what our comments will be, and what our thoughts will be. So you don't have to leave. But we had to close the public meeting.
But that means this is their time to speak.
so I need a motion to close the public meeting, case number 2401 PC.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Roll call,
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Sayward.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Commissioner DeGraff.
Aye.
Commissioner Simmons.
Aye.
Commissioner Machewski. Chairman Kempa.
Aye.
All right, we're back and going.
But email me, okay?
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Jenna, lead us off.
Yeah, so I was really impressed with how many people came tonight. So I was grateful for that, to be able to educate us on a subject that we need to make a recommendation on. But what I heard very loud and clear was that we have ordinances that people may or may not be aware of. So I think the first thing would be to revisit what we have on the books now and to help clarify, you know, there's maybe 4 or 6 different complaints. You know, the number of chickens, the noise, the coops, the location, and how it's being constructed, and chickens running at large. I mean, there's really only a handful of issues, and I think it's true, our codes are addressing those, but maybe not the most efficient way. So I think the first thing is to find out what we have on the books, whether or not it does cover the complaints, and then maybe explore 2 things. One is, is there a better way to enforce it? Like, you know, is there somebody at the city that just does, you know, animal complaints or something?
We do not have an animal control officer within the city of Prospect Heights. Most large municipalities do. Arlington Heights, Mount Prospect, Wheeling, large municipalities. That is a position within the city that is not on the books. So when the calls come in, it's handled by a beat officer. The beat officer goes out and checks. They don't hear it, they go on to their next issue. Then we get a call maybe a day or 2 or after 3 or 4 complaints that, I've been complaining and nothing happens. And then we get involved, and by the time we get involved, you've got now a resident who may be agitated, maybe not, may be concerned that their issues aren't being listened to. And then we get out there, and especially on the noise, we don't hear it, so we can't address it.
Okay, so again, that's a procedural problem. It's not going to get solved by adding another ordinance or another governing type restriction. It's something that is internal that needs to be addressed. How do you enforce the ordinances that are already in the books more efficiently? Is the question. And then the other thing is, for people that are coming into the community that do want to have chickens, I think an educational cut sheet would be perfect. I mean, to eventually, you know, let them know what ordinances they have to comply with, you know, for keeping the chickens in their yard, for making sure that the neighbors aren't affected by the noise, by making sure they know where the coops can be on their property, and you know, how they have to maintain the feed. That's all part of what's in our code already. So just having that cut sheet, so they don't have to go through, I mean, what is it, 4 different titles?
Right.
To try and...
And I didn't realize it was 4 titles until I started prepping for...
Right, so we can't expect our residents to have to do that.
Correct.
And maybe what we could also propose is an advisory board by volunteer, by seasoned volunteer chicken owners. I mean, there's a lot of passionate people here. Maybe they are willing to help out, right?
Well, yeah,
Or
or
a
even just
network if
calling, or having their numbers when there's a question, I think is very valuable.
And I mean, the people that know,
Yep.
that are, very educated and they know what they're doing, that's fine. But, like with dog owners, there's dog owners that know how to handle a dog, and there are dog owners that don't.
Right.
I bet there is a lot of people that would all of a sudden decide one day, I want some chickens, I want some eggs. And
Can I ask you a question, Director Peterson? is this something that we as the ZBA need to come up with, or is it something that we would ask the staff to review and come up with solutions or potential things, and then we review it?
My thoughts on the process. Originally, I had thought possibly putting a resident committee together, kind of like a few years ago. Do you remember the commercial truck ordinance, which was a really contentious matter? And actually,
I was bringing that up, Janet, and I don't know if you would, the way that this reminded me of that meeting where we had a room full of people that were against the whole idea of the commercial trucks being advertised. And I remember Hanson Heating being here, and seeing, when I drive through town, I still see Hanson Heating sitting outside, and the only reason it comes to fruition was if someone complains. So I think that that vehicle worked. If tomorrow my neighbor has an obnoxious car next to him, at least I have a way to remedy the situation. For roosters, I think that's probably our biggest driving factor. And I apologize for being late, so I might be missing some of the stuff. But if roosters are the biggest concerns of people at 5 o'clock getting woken up by a rooster, the process, there is a nuisance ordinance for that. Is that correct?
Yes.
correct.
But the problem we're running is hard to enforce it because by the time the police show up, the rooster might not be roosting anymore. Right?
Or the complainant doesn't want to follow through on signing the complaint and volunteering to go the next step.
So that's something that I don't think, if that's the case, then it's not a big enough problem for them, I guess, number one. But there's ways to, if I had a rooster next to me crowing at 5 in the morning, it would really bother me enough. And it showed up at 5 o'clock on Monday and the rooster stopped. Well, the next day I'm taping it. And I'm saying, okay, here's what happened. And I can make it a point to make it a nuisance ordinance. And from what we're hearing, there's a way to control roosters potentially for crowing, if that's the case. That's probably the minority of people that are much. I personally love the idea of having chickens in our town. When I walked through, I remember when I had COVID, I was walking through our neighborhood, ran to a neighborhood that gave us chicken eggs. I mean, it was cool. I think it's a cool thing to have in our town. And it seems like, and we have bigger lots, so restricting the amount of chickens seems potentially a slippery slope. Because I wouldn't guess people have 50 chickens at one point, but if we don't have a nuisance, but I guess that's something we could talk about. But in terms of the noise, if there's something in place already, I think we've got to educate the person that has that problem, because it seems to be a minority problem as it is, to say, okay, we have something in place, here's a process you got to follow. That's how I look at it.
In the noise is probably the most common complaint because that's usually the one that irritates somebody the most. And when we call, and Gonzalo, our code enforcement officer here, and Andrew, the building inspector, the conversations typically aren't pleasant. You know, yeah, you got to control your rooster from crowing in the morning. How am I going to stop a crew? Well, we don't know. You know, we had heard and saw some literature that they could cut the vocal cords, but why would you do? You know, that doesn't seem effective. Hearing that there's a bark, literally a bark collar for chickens is an option, that may be the simple solution.
Yeah, I mean, we have to look at what other villages do to a point, because then we are different from them in a lot. But if you look at this spreadsheet you put, just about every town prohibits roosters, and that's probably the reason. And we have to be mindful for those people, but if it's a minority, I don't think we need to create as a problem. It is like, I might be next to a rooster, it doesn't bother me, I might enjoy it, as one lady said, it's part of the scene, and some people like it, but some people might not. Now, I don't know how much of a problem it is, but it seems like there's something in place to potentially stop it. Now, that's a ticket, and then if it is a nuisance, regardless, that law's in place, right? That law's in place, so it's if you can enforce it, then it becomes a problem for the person that has a rooster to resolve it, by either putting the collar on them or eliminating by giving the rooster away. That's a valid way to the path, and I don't think we've had a lot of those issues.
It's, and Gonzalo, correct me or add in if you'd like, but the overall number of complaints are not unmanageable, okay? But it has hit the point where a couple residents did bring it, so it was brought to our attention. But when I go back through 9 years of being the director, that's every spring, every summer, especially as daylight gets earlier and earlier in the mornings, people are now being woken up at 4:30, 4. You know, the family that has chickens 2 doors down from me, it's 3:25 every AM in June. Growing up on a farm, I don't mind it, okay? But when we have residents that have brought it to an issue, how do you resolve that? Okay? And and I think my analysis of the towns and reading through this, it was to control those types of nuisance complaints that the staff had to respond to. So it appears that those municipalities chose the all-out prohibition so they wouldn't have to deal with it, is from my analysis of what I read. I have not interviewed any of them. Again, this was just to kind of give some starting point for discussion. But from, you know, being doing this job also for 30-some years, I've heard from others that have a job of enforcing in other towns. Other towns I've worked for, we never allowed chickens, so I never had to deal with it. Because the nature of the town, the smaller lots, the more density, it was not, you know, a use that was ever allowed.
But again, one of the homeowners mentioned, and I thought it was good, you know, if you get a problem with a neighbor, a rooster, just knock on their door once, twice, 3 times, 10 times. I think that's a proactive approach.
Common sense.
That's a stretch.
There's no way to enforce that.
We do recommend, it's usually better if you talk to your neighbors directly instead of the city showing up at their door.
Yeah, because it's
You know,
contentious, you know, so if the city shows up, they'll be mad.
You know, the problem is.
What we saw tonight were very conscientious people that managed their flocks well.
A lot of people.
You know,
I mean,
that's a clear, and a lot of times too, but we do come across those folks that are not good keepers. You know, and of course, what probably ended up, and in the case that was brought forward, which I can't specifically say, they did have other code enforcement and other violations that had to be addressed as well as the other stuff. But it was a contributing factor, you know, and Gonzalo, those folks, their chickens actually went into the right-of-ways, they went into the neighbors' yards, there was no control, you know, so trying to work with them and put them on notice. So we did address those, but, you know, that's, not all neighbors are as conscientious as the folks that were here tonight. You know, that's the sad reality is we spend most of our time with the minority of the users of certain groups. There's certain systems.
Right now, right now, let's say we have a rooster that's crowing at 3 in the morning or 4 in the morning, and you have a neighbor that's adamant about, listen, this is waking up my children, this is not right. Because that would be my concern of what we would have to worry about. If they call the police and they issue a ticket, let's say the rooster family is, you know, I'll pay the ticket, not a big deal. I have plenty of money, I'm paying the ticket. Is that the only remedy we have at this point, Dan? It just.
Yes.
So is it something we could put in place where X amount of times or X amount of a period of time would?
3 strikes you out?
Kind of something like that.
I would have to talk with the police department and see how they want to go with that.
Yeah.
Okay? Again, I don't know. The hard part is I think it was stated earlier, we're spending some resources to address a issue that we have the things on. Noise is one of them. I heard tonight we have a possible solution for noise complaints. They're those ones that we could make recommendations. Some of the at large.
How do you make them comply? I mean, other than
Well, the
going
issue
to
is,
court?
well, ultimately, that's the only real enforcement tool we have.
Court.
We court, that's the final, and that's.
And fines.
And then the issue is that unless a judge orders the destruction of that or the removal of that, it's just a financial penalty. And then we're dealing with that issue over and over again.
Collecting it the whole 9 yards.
The collecting will not be an issue because most people will pay the fine to the court and go on, and, you know, they'll wait to get another ticket, and then they'll do the same thing and delay. And again, I think it's the minority of the folks that are doing it, but it's the ones that get people in front of councils. And I think why some of the towns, and this is a professional opinion, prohibit it is because if you prohibit it, then you don't have to deal with those problem people on a regular basis. And do I think that's the right approach? Not necessarily. Okay? But you're looking at the whole building department tonight. This is all we have. You're Gonzalo, Andrew, Jen, and myself. You know, do we have time to chase those complaints? And then especially if someone complains and we spend the time but don't want to follow through, then that's another issue. But I think that's still the smaller of the issue. My big concern is that, you know, equitability and enforcement of the ordinance related to accessory structures. We do, okay, if a person wants to have a chicken coop and their chicken run in their yard, that's permanent, and they're not getting permits, why are we requiring people to get sheds?
Right.
Patios, gazebos, those other things in their yard permits, or even acknowledging that.
But I didn't get the impression that anybody would be against getting a building permit if they knew they needed one. So I think it, again, goes back to the education part of it.
Yeah, could I give my experience there? Because I don't know if you were here when I got mine. So I called, and my kids wanted chicken, so I called, and this is what we were told. And these people were, this is what I was told. There's a nobody just calling. They said you could have as many chickens as you want, you could have roosters. And this is what I was told. If the neighbors complained, then you'd have to get rid of the roosters, which made total sense to me. I didn't have any roosters. And then the coop, I was told if it was not I don't
Permanently attached to this.
See, it was, so what I did was I just took, timbers and went around with the chicken wire a couple times. And nobody said anything about a permit. I certainly didn't push the issue. I was looking for trouble.
Prior to you actually being employed by the city of Prospect Heights, it was just willy-nilly. As long as it's not attached to the ground, they allowed it. And there was no size requirement.
Well, mine was attached, but the poles were attached.
But when you read what the ordinance says and how it's said, it's always been restricted.
I'm
just
How
saying,
the
I'm
previous
just saying what was-
administration
We have a
interpreted it.
definition of poop.
And,
Fine.
we can look at those types of things, but, I had one, or very early on here, that the top of the chicken coop was almost the height of the house. It was multiple stories, that was well in excess of the height requirement of accessory structures. Once it's built illegally, it's very difficult then, without sitting in court and getting a court order, to have them lower the roof. So I think educating people that, have your chickens. We don't really, if you can control your flock, your rooster, but please be like other residents who are putting up accessory structures. If you're going to do a permanent coop with putting stakes in the posts in the ground and making it even though it wasn't in concrete, that's a basically permanent installation. Okay?
I'm just telling you what was explained to me when I called. So I didn't read anything. I just called.
I mean, even if a shed doesn't have a concrete foundation, it has to be anchored so wind doesn't take it into my neighbor's yard or house.
So there are some basic zoning and basic construction issues that I think should be applied on this. Controlling the number of chickens, that's a minor issue, in my opinion. Okay? As long as the roosters aren't creating the nuisance, because that's gonna be difficult, and now we found options, that may not be an issue. But if we can get, the compliance on the zoning side, so at least wherever these are, the structures are at, the runs are at, are away from the property line, so there's a less likelihood of being a potential to the neighbors.
But a
So
lot of,
if the coop is not a permanent structure and they can move it around, I still think that we need at least a minimum, from a property line. I mean.
Correct. There are rules, that you can have your temporary coop, please don't set it within that 5-foot setback.
so you would want to add a mobile coop to a auxiliary structure? Somehow.
We don't allow people to park cars within that 5-foot setback. We don't allow people to park their campers in that 5-foot setback. What makes chicken coops different? And it's not against the chicken coop or camper owner or this and that. We have those zoning setback requirements for what? Keep some distance between. Also a lot of people put structures there which then become a drainage issue in a town that's subject to flooding. So those are the issues that we would look at keeping those setbacks clear.
I think we have to define what coops are in general, because if we can do that, and this sounds stupid, but I have a sport court in my backyard. I literally plug up chicken wire so the ball wouldn't roll away. It could be considered a chicken coop to a point. So would I need to get a permit to put that up? That seems weird, but we have to kind of define what a chicken, I'm sure there's different variants of coop, so maybe.
If you look at the zoning code, and I listed it there, it's any structure that's for the housing of barns, doghouses, kennels, or other structures for similar type structures. It could be open to the sky or set upon the ground. It doesn't define necessarily concrete. How previous administrations interpreted that. Also, too, you got to remember, prior to I being here, the village hall was on furlough 1-2 days a week. There was no staff to do this, so it was easier. Yeah, as long as it's not permanent or it's this, just go ahead and do it.
Current
Times have changed. I know of people who've gotten into chicken raising, not just in Prospect Heights, but in the whole area, has increased since COVID. Okay? Does that mean that our current standards are adequate or not? That's only a question. I know if people don't register, I'm sorry, Janet, go ahead.
Well, so I was just going to say maybe, so whether it's temporary or permanent, it should be considered a chicken coop, because you do have to anchor a movable one as well, right?
No, you don't anchor the movable ones. They're on, you pick it up like a wheelbarrow. It's like they call it a tractor.
Okay, but once you get it to where you're moving it.
You don't have to anchor.
It's on wheels?
The weight just keeps it down, the weight.
Oh, the weight does?
It's like parking a boat trailer or a utility trailer or something to that effect. That's not the big concern.
So, but maybe we should say, though, that whether it's somehow in a definition or something, that whether or not it's, movable or permanent, that it has to comply with the setback requirements.
One of the things that was not, it's implied in, and it's stated in the zoning ordinance, is that all those uses, whether they require a building permit or not, should get a zoning permit for zoning approval. So that's a lesser fee that's already in the books. It would allow us, and to trigger that would be a registration, so we could know, and then a person sets up, show us, yeah, you're operating that, if you keep it within this, you're fine, okay? Then it helps us because our problem is, and our biggest waste of time is not the people when they come in, it's after the fact, trying to get them to change behavior. That's where guys, correct me if I'm wrong, that's our biggest problem, is if we talk to people usually beforehand, get the educational materials, have a chance to take a look at where they're gonna put stuff. When people put in a swimming pool, we do a pre-pour inspection. Why? To make sure that it's in the right place.
So that would be why we need this educational statement that, is on your kiosk. You give it to them to put it on Facebook or their groups. And, this is, if you're a chicken owner, these are the requirements of the city.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just out there. You put links to it on the e-news, you put you know, do it in your quarterly report.
But the problem is,
Could we have an additional, I mean, you can go on our website, or on the city website and read the building codes. Could there be a section for,
Oh, that part of it's
That's easy.
a fairly easy part. I think also too, one of the things is because the scope of the number of people is fairly significant.
Right.
Okay, it's not 10% of the population, but I'd say it's about 5% of the city's residential properties, based on just what I heard tonight, do enjoy this, okay? We have people who are dog owners that, probably a little more, they gotta get a license every year to do that, so I don't see why a person can't register, make sure that they comply with zoning, make sure they're meeting all those other zoning rules, and then be gone.
I'm the registrations, I know what someone brought up a point of overregulating, but I don't think that's what the case here is. One, if someone has to register chickens, one gives them a directory of chickens that gives you, okay, we can compare, these people are complying. Two, educates them before they build anything or have anything. And three, if we just put on Facebook or on the website, you're expecting people to do the research and figure this out. But this makes them know what they have to do before they put it in, and allows them to enforce it better than just making it part of a code. Kind of like making a shed or any other structure you're building, including, and I agree with the registration of dogs. I know there's a fee on here for having chickens, and it seems minimal, but, and I know this isn't a problem, but I do see this potential problem. If people are making chickens for a business, like let's say they have 100 chickens, and there's a meat farmer, as they said, that's, to me, is like, if I have 100 chickens next to me, I'm concerned about it to a point, you know what I'm saying? But if you say, okay, if you have 20 chickens because they're pets or they're part of your family, or that seems to be a decent number of 50, but after a certain amount, there should be some kind of fee, like, okay, after 50, we're gonna charge you $10 a chicken. Because if you're using it as a business, it's almost like, it sounds like weird, but you're taxing them to a point, but.
The issue is our code is very clear already that it's not supposed to be used for business purposes, both in the animal control ordinance and in the zoning ordinance. But the issue is if you don't know what's out there, how do you know that it's a problem?
Yeah.
You know, we do register home occupations. We do have a limitation on those. What's a permitted home occupation in the district? And even though it's permitted as a cottage industry, it's still not permitted by our zoning ordinance as an approved business. There's a lot of businesses out there that are approved by various state regulated agencies that the city controls. So, just to keep you.
Does the city currently allow you to have chickens without a coop?
You need a coop. You need a coop, that's where they sleep at night.
Yeah.
You have to have some coop. Now, in the table, in the research that I did, most of the towns require you to have the state registration before they will issue you a local one, just because that way should there be a health issue, and that's our primary, then there's a reportability. You know, we can go up.
Who enforces that, Dan? How would
All it is it's a voluntary, but for example, if the word got out that someone's got diseased chickens, you know, which, again, I'm talking hypothetical, I don't have any personal firsthand experience, but reading through the state and through the USDA, granted, it's for larger producers, but when you get a lot of neighbors, we had tonight, North Elmhurst, that there were 4 houses that had chickens right next door to each other. We had other people tonight testify that had their multiple neighbors back then. If one of those neighbors' chickens get in and they do happen to commingle, there's a potential. And that's what the USDA and the state livestock registry is, a way to report and track those issues. I'm a member of a hunting club. We do farm-raised pheasants. They're in the same category as chickens and fowl and duck, okay? We have to change our rules because there's also ponds and there's also wild migratory waterfowl that come in. We have a lot of wild migratory ducks that make Prospect Heights their home. So there is the potential of cross-contamination, okay? As ever small as it is, that's where a low pathogenic virus could potentially become highly pathogenic and be fatal to the chicken flock. So when we look at it, it's not this house here, that house here. I know, and the folks on North Elmhurst, they're all great. I've seen all their birds. They're 4 or 5 houses right in a row, and combined together, those 4 houses, at one point this summer had probably close to 85 birds. One house had most of them. Did we ever have complaints on them? No. But, you know, I think there is.
That doesn't make it right.
Yeah, I think there does need to be a way for us to monitor the situation, provide some education. Do I think we need to ban chickens or set a number? I don't know.
I think we tread lightly on it in terms of, just because it seems to be a big part of our community, but we have to, what are we trying to accomplish today?
Today was just information gathering.
Okay.
Okay, hear what the public had to say. And we did see tonight that even the non-chicken owners that are neighbors were in support of it.
And not one complaint.
That's
what I thought was weird, that it was all, that nobody.
And every single one of the folks that were at the October 28th meeting were notified of this meeting. I sent out an agenda. I called them personally, reminded them of the meeting.
These are the people that had complaints?
Well, how this started, Neil, is a group of residents went to the city council.
Okay.
City council referred it to us because we're acting in the role of the plan commission, the public meeting, fact finding, looking at, do we have to plan for something for the city? We advertised it, we put out there for the last 3 months, every meeting, I give my report, we're gonna talk about chickens, okay? Come and be involved. So, am I surprised that not a lot of people against didn't? Maybe, or there's a majority of the town that really has no opinion.
Or they're there and they don't want to say anything.
That could all, if you remember that meeting we had with it was 2 people that spoke, and I remember that one gentleman that got up, he was an older gentleman, the first one that spoke against the cars that were being, the commercial trucks, and the crowd just got on. He was an older gentleman too, and I was like, I give this man a lot of credit for it. And you brought up, look, and his neighbor had this flashy car that was
100% wrapped.
Yeah, it was obnoxious. So kudos to him for having the courage to do it. But there might have been one person, and he's just like, you know what? I'm not doing this tonight. You know.
Well, if you're not going to speak up, you're not going to speak up.
Well, the city has to cater to all its residents, right?
And I read that letter, that one complaint letter that you had in the packet here. That wasn't about chickens. That was about 2 neighbors that are not getting along.
And again,
could be the case too.
And there's a lot of that, you know, and it's with all code-related issues, all maintenance. It's not necessarily just chickens.
And to go and knock on your neighbor's door and try and plead your case, I mean, not everybody's friendly anymore. I mean, you don't know what's going to open that door.
Yeah, that's.
Fortunately.
So I think, Dan, I know you probably don't have this number, but approximately over the last 2 years since COVID's gone, how many chicken noise complaints has the village had, do you know?
About a dozen this past year, about 12 to 20 last year. Okay, it's not a significant number, but an email I got since the packet went out basically said, well, I don't want to call on my neighbor, but it's bugging me because it's at 5:30 in the morning.
Keep in mind, if you got 12 to 20 calls, there's probably 40 people that, at some point, not everyone's calling. It doesn't mean it hasn't bothered everyone, right?
And the issue is we don't have the ability to track
the same person calling.
the same person or not. You know, we do have to respond to anonymous complaints. That's a policy of the city. We do have to investigate whether it's a complaint or not. We do follow up, we do knock on doors, we do make phone calls if we have the information and check. So could I tell you it's the same person making the same complaint? No.
Do they list an address, obviously, that the complaint's at?
It can be announced.
No, not where they're
they will
coming from, but where the nuisance is
they
at.
will- most of the time, that's how we find out where it's at. Is they say,
Right.
Here, it's at this address.
So on those 12 to 20, whatever you had, is it constantly the same address or is it
No.
different addresses over
No,
time?
they're different.
Typically different. So that tends to believe it's not the same person
It
calling.
just so happened the one property that the folks complained about, the three of them complained about the same property at the city council meeting. But no, it's not the same property, okay?
How many noise complaints do they get? Do you have any idea? Like, it doesn't have to be chickens.
That would be police.
Nuisance, nuisance calls or whatever.
No,
Like, that aren't chickens.
I get more noise complaint calls from condominiums where people have, since COVID, of people who've had exercise bikes and treadmills and weight systems put in their houses because they couldn't go to the gym anymore. Because, and by the way, the way
No
our
regulation.
noise ordinance is written, it's only a nuisance if it's between 10 PM and 7 AM. Okay, so again, an antiquated definition. Also too, most chickens, you will not meet the IEPA's definition or noise band rating. And I think you were very articulate at bringing those standards up. You know, it would never be something the IEPA would ever address, but we have to address because it's considered a nuisance the way it's written in our ordinance. If it's a reported nuisance, we have to verify it, okay? And so there's a little issue there.
The other thing that happened with me was, so I'm on the corner, and they knocked the house across the street from, I'm probably 3 years into my chickens, and they knock, and Lucas builds this beautiful multi-million-dollar
Why didn't you
mansion.
take down the rest of the wall? No, that's another question.
And my chicken coop is right by his master, and I tell my wife and the kids, I'm like, this guy just spent $1 million, I'm the piker in the neighborhood, this guy's a legit player. So I have to knock on the door, and if he wants them gone, they're gone. So I knock on the door, and he says to me, I gotta tell you something. He goes, my mother from Poland was here yesterday. She says, Lucas, only you could move to something like this, and I hear the chickens singing all day. She's like, I'm gonna go wash that man's windows, because that's how much I enjoyed it. And I think that's a lot. I think a lot of people are like that.
I've got one, a letter I got was a
Which is
gentleman.
my experience.
I got an email from a gentleman who was born and raised on a farm in Austria, who it reminds him of living, growing
Well, that's
up.
the gentleman on Ridge.
Yes.
Yeah, he's a
Oh,
great,
yeah,
he's a
yeah,
great
yeah.
guy.
So at the end of the day, is it a bad problem? No, but we do need to think about looking at the ordinances. I agree with Janet, looking at what we've got. Are there some tweaks, addressing some public education? And I do believe that this, based on what I'm reading, simple registration requirement, similar to dog tags. People have to get dog licenses is not unreasonable.
So
Are you gonna
somebody
do that for the
actually,
existing?
somebody
Okay.
actually mentioned, we get that yearly letter about licenses. Can you just check a box there that says you have chickens instead of?
We'll have to see, right now, I think we're in the process of changing how vehicle stickers, it would be very difficult to track that. We could talk to Peter, we could see if we could get a voluntary, people could volunteer. Our databases right now for the finance, because that's all driven by finance.
Well, the dog tags.
Well, yeah, the
Yeah.
dog licenses and all that stuff, cats.
Cats, yep.
So all that, I don't say it can't be done, I just don't know the process of how to make that work for voluntary registration, or even if that's something. Again, these are all ideas, just nothing's off the table.
And it's an honor system too, because
Oh,
I
it all-
talked to Jen about it at River Trails. We have 360 units. We got like 8 dogs registered.
Well,
You walk the grounds, you see 35 dogs. Everyone's got a cat.
well, you get it through
She can't afford it.
rabies, right? I mean, as far as.
We don't have any access to
No.
the county records for rabies. Everybody has to voluntarily let us know that they have dogs or cats.
Oh, seriously?
And
Yes.
I bet you
That's like
20%
state
at
records for
best
the birds.
in the
There's-
city.
For the registration of the chickens, we have no way of accessing state records.
And it's about-
I think I think the only problem becomes is if
Realize that.
a complaint comes and you go look and this person has chickens, they haven't registered them, then you can fine them for it
I
potentially.
thought.
Same with the dog,
We
right?
got it through the rabies.
I understand where you're going with that, Neil, but the hard part is it puts us into a position of enforcement versus education and trying to get them to voluntary.
No, I'm saying, like, if people, most people in Prospect Heights that have dogs know they need to register them, but maybe 20% people, 25% people do, I'm gonna guess, because it's voluntary to a point, right? It's mandatory, but technically there's no way to enforce it unless something triggers an enforcement of it, right? Like the rabies part, like, I have 2 dogs, I've registered them, but if I don't register them next year,
It gets loose.
there's nothing that
And some
I'm gonna get
fines.
fined or anything from the town, and I think
Well,
that,
Chip.
the hard part is again, it's relying on voluntary compliance.
yeah,
You said it right from the start. It's just like buying vehicle stickers.
yeah.
We spend a lot of time because people who don't do it, it's unfair to those who do. And there's a couple of other issues. So I know it's getting late. Is there any other thoughts that people have about moving forward? I think we're not going to be able to get this turned around in 30 days, I will tell you that. There's some outlining and some bullet points that staff will be able to work on and come back with an update in 30 days of where we are, give some concepts. We should be able, there's some really good ordinances out there. There's some really good handouts that other municipalities have done as part of this educational that I did see, that we can share, I can share with the ZBA, and see if it's along the right path. But again, this will need some further discussion on what you guys want, but I think it's gonna
Yeah,
be a
and like I
working
said, we've got this, zoning code consultant that we're working with, and we should get his opinion
Yep.
as well, so.
Definitely contact our friend Michael.
So, one quick question. So, the auxiliary or accessory buildings, the coop would add to the square footage of your backyard. So obviously, if you allow 720 for a garage and 200 for a shed, you're maxed out at that point, and you can't even have a...
No, we do have 80 square feet if you've got the 20,000 square foot lot.
Yeah. Does it count as a structure? Aren't you allowed only so many structures?
You can have up to 3 structures under that section of the zoning code. If you choose to have a garage, something over 200 square feet, that by ordinance is a garage. Okay. And you can have anywhere from 210 or 201 to 720. That's one structure. But if you have one structure over 200, your second structure can only be 200 square feet.
So what happens?
And then if you have a third, you can have a third, which is maxed out at 80. The whole idea on lot coverage is that no more than 25% of the lot can be covered by roofed impervious structures.
What would happen if they attach it to the house?
You can't. You gotta have the coop, it has to have some separation.
A coop would, okay. I mean, you could attach a garage, obviously, and then...
Correct.
Then the height would change.
Correct.
If you're within building lines.
If you're
Right,
like the setbacks.
Right.
To me, when you look at what a typical chicken needs, what do you provide for yours? About 4 square feet per bird?
The majority of mine are still trees, so we're talking like 4-pound birds, so they need 2 feet.
2 feet, okay. And that's what I was trying to figure out when I was looking at some of these ordinances, because some ordinances 3-foot minimum, 4-foot minimum, 6-foot minimum. And
You're talking square feet.
so in
per
the
chicken.
actual structure,
Mhm.
the coop structure for health, what they determine to be healthy living, a bird needs so much square footage, okay? And I think it's based on size of bird is what my guess was, not knowing, but I've seen as little as 3 square feet per bird to 6 square feet. So if you've got, I'm just gonna use the number 10, just for math purposes. If you've got 6 square feet required for a bird, your coop is no bigger than 60 square feet in dimensions, okay? That would comply as the third accessory structure. Now you start going 40, 50 birds, exponentially, that structure has to get bigger. Okay? So therefore, is it now compliant with the zoning codes on accessory structures, or do we have to look at a different definition?
Do we-
have to do?
Do we enforce the square footage per chicken though? Do we have that in our?
No, not
Oh, right.
now.
But who enforces that anywhere?
Oh, by registering, by how these other towns do it, the one code official I called on this, what they do is the applicant, let's say that, and it doesn't matter if they're existing or not, every year, the person who wants to have backyard chickens has to provide that they're still registered with the state, and they have to get that before and get a license from the municipality prior to buying their chickens.
So, but this is a cruelty to animal thing, I would assume, right?
What was that?
This is, lends to cruelty to animal. Like, every chicken needs X amount of square feet. You can't put 100 chickens in a small area and not have space. But who enforces that
So the
particular
local
rule?
municipality, if they've got rules about it, would look at it. We don't, we don't even know how many chickens, how many square feet, what they have. All we know is that a structure is there or not there. In terms of enforcing that cruelty issue, I don't know what that answer is. I'd have to call the Illinois Department of Agriculture.
So like, you're as a chicken owner, and I know one of us.
Yes, to be.
But is that a concern as a chicken owner, like your neighbor, let's say, has a coop that's undersized and has 5 times as many chickens as you should have?
No, because the way we did it was we went on Google and found all the information.
But let's say you don't. Let's say I'm here just to raise.
They would, I don't know where they would go, because I had like my coop is only like this big, and they go in there at night through this little door, and there's like 3 perches.
But let's say I didn't care, and so just kept shoving them in there. Is that a concern for chicken owners?
Can you come up to the microphone so I can, thank you.
I went back to public. I'm
I think
sorry.
there's a clarification too. The coop is where they sleep. And to your point, Jerry, it's tiny, right? They only need to
They wanna be tight,
stand
yeah.
up and they sleep on a bar. The run is where you need multiple square footage, because that's where they go out in the daytime, that's where they eat, that's where they dust bath, they do their things, they live, that's their community. For a lot of people, the run, like myself, it's a fenced-in area of our yard with a net over it. For other people, it's chicken wire, square boxed, whatever.
Some other people, it's their whole backyard.
Exactly. So I think we have to be careful saying coop versus run, because they are different things and they do require different square footage. To your point, could you just pile a bunch of chickens in a coop? No, they will stop going in at some point because it's too crowded and there's no more room on the bar, and they will roost in your trees. So it's very common for chickens to sleep in trees.
So you have no trees.
Well, there's just someone that regulates it?
Other than the Department of Agriculture or the FDA, you'd have to turn them in.
They regulate it themselves. They won't, if you only have so big of a, like I couldn't have had 10 chickens. They
Yeah,
would have had no room.
I don't know where that falls upon.
So
I don't know if it's an issue.
again, I'm just going by the ordinance that I've read, that they are looking out not only, my understanding is if they feel that you've got, and I'm sure it depends on the size of birds you have too, because what we learned is that, and I know there's all different breeds of chicken or subspecies of chickens, and they are different sizes, would have different requirements. Now, how do we know what those are? I don't know. I don't know how these other towns do. All I know is some of them have said they're looking at, well, if you've got a larger number of hens, you should provide a larger square footage for those birds so that they have a safe, comfortable place to roost at night.
I don't think we should even go there.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think that
That's what I'm saying.
some of these towns
I mean, that's
are.
like saying, how many dogs can you put in a doghouse? Or dogs in a dog park?
So if you have a portable, I mean.
Or cats?
My question was,
I could have
Yeah.
an 800 square foot portable unit that I move around with my bobcat. I mean, is
Cruelty to
that?
animal, you
To be real honest,
a dog.
You drive up
right?
Route
If
12 all
if
the
they're
time.
being
Yeah.
mistreated.
You go by Old Land Road by
This
Jamie's.
could fall
Yeah.
under poultry. It's
That
some
barn
regular,
on the
right?
right
That's
hand
my
side of Benji's property, he's got a portable coop. He has his on a wagon, has a ramp. Right. They go up into it, they roost. Every so often, you see him pull up the stakes, move the chicken wire, put the coop in there, because that area must either A, been cleaned of all the potential food or grubs or that, plus it may have been, had enough of the chicken droppings that they needed to move to the other space, because chickens, I don't think, like to walk in their own droppings. You know, my experience as growing up, they are fairly clean birds. So a mobile coop like that, do I need a permit for that? No. But should we register to see that people are following our zoning code so they don't park them next to? That's just me, you know.
How many of these issues do you think we have then? Of improper coops or runs being built?
I really don't know, because we don't get necessarily, unless we get a complaint on something else, then we discover.
Okay.
Okay, I have no clue what the number of people that are 100% compliant with their zoning rules or not, just like a lot of other things. But at least most of the people know they do need to get approvals prior to building certain structures or certain uses within a property. And, you know.
And I hate to say it, it's kind of the chicken before the egg.
John, thank you very much. It's 10:51 night.
I think we do this. Take
I like the
credit.
informational packet.
Yes. Yeah.
Just when you want to get chickens here, there's a packet, take it, these are
So,
the rules.
so this is a pretty heavy subject.
Yes, it is.
I don't think we have neither the knowledge nor the expertise to, for sure, make any type of advisement at this point. I would recommend that we let the staff research the issue further, look at the existing ordinances, weigh them against the most common complaints, which aren't many. So I think that yeah, we would, you know, ask the staff to come up with something that we can review, something that makes, you know, the chickens happy and our code enforcement. Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's just, it's 10:15.
Yes. And our code enforcement able to do their job in an efficient manner.
That's the big thing.
Yeah, and you mentioned that there might be some municipalities that have kind of a management type statement. So to get some samples of that maybe would be helpful.
And the, we've mentioned the educational sheet, which is
Which is what I
probably a
meant,
great
yeah.
idea. I guess I mentioned the advisory board, maybe some of the chicken owners are willing to help out. Those are the things that I would recommend that we look at.
That is, staff would be willing to, and that's not a problem. I would ask that we come back, give us 60 days but we'll report back on some progress next month. It'll give us a chance to engage members that were here, of the community that were here, look at some other subject matter experts. Dig a little deeper into some of the rationale besides some of the restrictions and requirements of other ordinances that others have gone through, so we're not recreating the wheel.
Yep.
And then the decision, you know, there's multiple decisions. There could be, we do nothing.
Yeah.
There could be some other minor issues, but I agree with you, Chairman, there's more information needed to be gathered to review before decisions can be made.
Do you want us to vote on the motion to?
All you have to do is give me a concurrence from the majority board that that's the direction you want to go.
I would like to make that motion to pass it to staff.
Second?
I'll second it.
Do we need a roll call or?
I gotta be careful what I ask for.
Roll call, please, to be safe.
Sure. Commissioner DeGraff.
Aye.
Commissioner Sayward.
Aye.
Commissioner Simmons.
Aye.
Commissioner Patel.
Aye.
Commissioner Machetsky.
Aye.
Chairman Kempa.
Aye.
We will be having a meeting next month. We have an application on file that just came in Friday.
It was this week.
Or, yeah, it was early this week. I haven't even gotten into the full request yet. Oh, no, that's the Euclid one, correct?
Yes.
203.
208.
208 Euclid. It's gonna be a rear yard variation, setback variation for a detached garage, and there's some extenuating hardships with the lots, so that's why they're coming. And then we'll have a brief update on any progress we have to date so that'll be there for the record, so it's on tape. I thought tonight's, the attendees handled themselves in a respectful manner. They presented their positions very articulately. They came in with passion and care about the community, and I thought it was a very informative meeting.
I agree. They had some great educational information, both in writing and at the meeting. So it was very helpful.
Yep. They did what we always asked them to do. They came in with facts and
Yeah.
good numbers.
Yes, which is very beneficial to us moving forward and researching this. Thank you very much to all those that attended, and provided testimony tonight, or not testimony, but comments tonight regarding this matter.
Perry is going with, going ahead?
They passed.
Good.
They're in, right now with architectures, trying to work out the layout of the building, because they're taking basically a non-restaurant facility and having to figure out how to make it work.
They have excellent chicken.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's a good place. So the spice level can be really high.
Yes. Any other comments from anybody else? Can I please have a motion to adjourn at 10:24?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.